The Ares Empire greets us from a bird's-eye view. In the center of a small square stands a statue of a man riding a horse. Two guards patrol the streets of the city. The first one asks the second one if it's too quiet here. The older guard replies that the current atmosphere can hardly be called calm. Nobody knows when the revolutionaries will begin to act again. He said that they were ordinary village bumpkins, and they seemed to make him very angry. The first guard laughed and said that it was true. He says, things have been quiet lately. Maybe these rebels realized that their little rebellion was pointless. The second guard agreed with his partner's reasoning. Probably the Imperial Knights had already dealt with the rebels. They hoped that from now on, everything would remain this way, and that a peaceful and calm atmosphere would continue to reign in the Empire. The next second, we were in a closed room lit by torches. A multitude of knights gathered around a table, looking at their leader. Today they must destroy the Emperor and put an end to the Empire. This is the only way to restore the kingdom. There was a serious and slightly gloomy atmosphere in the room. Everyone present here understood that they had a big task ahead of them, and took the leader's words very seriously. These were the same rebels the guards were talking about. Each team member must fulfill his mission, but the leader assigned the most important task to one person. His name was Logan McLean. He is obliged to protect the secret manuscript at all costs. Logan answered briefly and seriously that he would complete the task. As soon as the meeting ended, Logan left the room, followed by the guy. He gradually approaches the main character. The guy walked up to Logan, calling him a patriot. Logan asked him why he thought that. He said it was because of the secret manuscript. Many people fell, sacrificing their lives to obtain and protect the manuscript from the Empire. Since the manuscript is under Logan's responsibility, it means that the Empire's army will target him first. Better meant that he would be obliged to take risks to fulfill his duty. With some dissatisfaction in his voice, Logan replied that he did not voluntarily agree to this idea. The guy said that he understood what was going on because Logan was fluent in the ancient language, but he didn't even complain, and this is a clear indicator of patriotism. Logan turned around and instantly silenced the guy. With his words, he directly insulted other comrades. It wasn't a matter of patriotism at all. Revenge is what fueled Logan's burning hatred for the Empire. He was a worthless person. We see an episode from his past. In a battle against his younger brother, the main character lost miserably. Ranyan picked up a sword just 3 years ago, but Logan has been training for 10 years to become a knight. Those around him could not believe that this fool was the eldest son of the family. For them, the future of the McLean family looked rather bleak. The scene changes, and we hear an angry voice. Logan poisons his younger brother, which his father can't believe. Logan stood still and bowed his head submissively, realizing that he had acted recklessly. But Logan's father could not forgive his son for such an offense. He crossed a line that should not have been crossed. He told Logan that if his younger brother did not recover from the poisoning, then Logan would immediately leave the family's castle. He went crazy with feelings of inferiority and hurt his brother. For this sin, his entire family turned against him, and he was expelled. That's who he was. After leaving home, he became a mercenary. Only after 10 years of hard work did it dawn on him what a terrible person he used to be. But the realization came to him too late. A gloomy atmosphere reigned in the city that day. There were rumors among the townspeople that a public execution would take place in the square today. The hooded stranger listened to every word of the townspeople, and soon heard that the one who was going to be executed was called McLean. At the same moment he stopped. He turned around and ran in the opposite direction. The townspeople continued to discuss the upcoming execution. It was rumored that McLean was an aura user who fought against the Empire on the front lines. Besides this, there was no news from members of the royal family. It seemed that they had fled in all directions. Ranyan, that's who was being led to execution. The one who hid his face was Logan. He rushed to the square, begging higher powers for only one thing, so that his brother would survive, because he had to tell him something. Unfortunately, he was late this time too. The guillotine was painted with red liquid, slowly flowing down. Logan's gaze was filled with horror. We hear a guard shout as he addresses the crowd. He holds a severed head in his hand and says that such an end met the fool who dared to rebel against the Empire. The crowd rejoiced, and cheers were heard. This moment became a turning point in the history of Logan. He promised to take revenge on the Empire for killing his family, and for taking away his chance to ask for forgiveness. We are returning from the past to the present. One of the Imperial guards identified Logan. Having learned that he had a secret manuscript, they rushed after him. Logan ran, trying to get away from the Imperial guards, but he soon came across a dead end. There was nowhere to run. A few seconds later, one of the Imperial guards found the main character. There was nowhere to go, and the only exit was blocked by the guard. The only option left was to fight. The Imperial guard runs at the protagonist like a raging bull. Logan managed to draw his sword and block the blow, but he didn't intend to remain on the defensive forever. His gaze was calm and focused. Logan repulsed the attack. The enraged guardian called him a non-entity and prepared to strike again. But soon he was unable not only to strike, but also to utter a word. The sword stabbed into his throat clearly prevented him from doing this. Logan dealt with the first guard, just as the second arrived. The second Imperial guard did not hesitate to rush at Logan, forgetting his own defenses. Like the first Imperial guard, he did not survive long in the fight with Logan. Suddenly, a third Imperial guard appeared behind Logan, raising his sword directly above his head. He hoped to take advantage of the element of surprise and put an end to the rebel who dared to deal with two of his comrades. But he also fell at the hands of the protagonist. None of the guards managed to survive. Logan never for a moment forgot his desire to take revenge on the Empire, and in order to fulfill this, he must destroy as many Imperial degenerates as possible. He was soon surrounded by Imperial guards. This time, the situation was more complicated. There were at least 4 opponents against him. In one-on-one combat, he was superior to his opponents, but fighting 4 at the same time was impossible. Is he really destined to die here without avenging his family? But he seemed to have a plan. His sly smile was proof of this. Logan said he had no choice and threw the weapon on the floor. Suddenly a blue ball appeared in his hand. He squeezed it, and the blue glow changed to red, and the ball disappeared. If he was destined to die, he decided to take the Imperial guards with him. They couldn't believe their eyes. The light was so bright that it changed from red to white. The energy of the magical object was felt far beyond the castle. Logan's life was filled with regrets. He existed for the sake of revenge. At least he was glad that he managed to destroy the Imperial degenerates, but he could not get rid of his greatest regret, even after death. He failed to ask for forgiveness. Even trying to take revenge on the Empire couldn't heal the deep wound in his heart. Luckily, he hoped to meet his family in the afterlife, and then he could apologize to everyone. The scene changes, and we see the main character. He looks like he suddenly woke up. His head hurt terribly, and this pain caused him discomfort. But wait, how can he even feel anything if he's dead? We hear a man's voice asking if the young master is okay. This man was familiar to Logan. Rick, Logan's chief servant, was whose voice we heard a few seconds earlier. He asked Logan again how he was feeling. Logan couldn't believe what he saw. Rick died 30 years ago, according to the idea. Logan himself died not so long ago, but now he sees in person a man who died decades ago and asks why he is alive. Before this, the calm and imperturbable Rick was incredibly surprised by the question from the main character. He decided that Logan had suffered a severe head injury and shouted for a doctor to be called. Rick approached the maid and told her to hurry, while Logan was looking intently somewhere. His attention was focused on the nightly battle outside the window. But it was not only this detail that interested him. The emblems of his house were everywhere. Is he dreaming about this? This simply cannot happen. We hear the voice of the boy who called Logan his brother. This voice was familiar to Logan. He would have recognized it from 1,000. Ronian, Logan's younger brother, came to visit him. He looked saddened and tried to look away. Logan remembered this moment in every detail. It happened after their first duel. Logan lost to his brother, and when he came to visit him, he met him with anger and aggression. The mere presence of his younger brother infuriated Logan. Despite all the insults, Ronian tried to see his brother more often and got used to following him everywhere. But after that ill-fated day, he stopped coming. The Empire took his family away from him, and the desire for revenge was ingrained in his mind for many years. But remembering what kind of person he was, Logan could not forgive himself for this. Rick approached Ronian and asked him to return to his room because the young master needed rest. Ronian and Rick stared at Logan. He broke the silence and asked his younger brother to come to him. Accustomed to constant insults, Ronian was surprised at how politely his older brother addressed him. Meanwhile, the perplexed Rick was scratching his head. Something seemed strange and unusual to him. Ronian apologized to Logan, saying that he should have been more careful. Logan interrupted him, saying that he was fine and there was no need to apologize. Logan told his little brother that he didn't do anything wrong. If anyone should apologize, it should be him. After these words, he remembered all the pain and sadness he had experienced. Maybe the Empire took his family away from him, but he had parted with his family even earlier because of his selfish behavior. Logan could not stand it and sat down on his knees and sobbed from the realization that he had treated his brother so badly. Ronian didn't understand what was happening and decided that his brother really needed to rest more. That day, Ronian was executed in the square. The vile and merciless Empire dared to take the life of such a good guy. He fought on the front lines on the orders of the kingdom and died. A few seconds later, Logan rose from his knees. He carefully placed his hands on his brother's shoulders. Finally, he managed to do what he could not do. Even in an attempt to take revenge on the Empire, he apologized to his younger brother. Tears ran down his cheeks. Ronian didn't understand why his brother was crying, but soon tears appeared on his face, as if he felt the sadness that Logan felt. Logan managed to accomplish what he could not in his desperate attempts to get revenge on the Empire. Ronian was still slightly perplexed, but was glad to see that his brother was almost healthy. He also told Logan that he would visit him again soon. Logan was happy about this and asked his little brother to go and rest. Finally, we see his happy expression. From the very beginning of the story, he was shrouded in rage, hatred, and pain. But now he found himself in the past and did what he always wanted with all his soul. But it was too early to relax. If he really went back in time, and this was not a dream, then that meant only one thing. It is unknown how and why he returned to the past, but using such an incredible chance, everything had to be changed. The main character was distracted from his thoughts by a female voice. The maid entered the room and immediately bowed down obediently, apologizing to the young master. A perplexed Logan asked the maid what she was apologizing for. Rick quickly entered the room and said that Maria apologizes for interfering with his rest. Logan remembered another unpleasant detail from his past. He treated the servants poorly, so it was no wonder they acted as if they were afraid of him. Logan said that everything was fine, and Maria didn't do anything wrong. Besides that, he asked Rick to bring him a pen and paper. Rick asked Logan what he was going to do with Maria with pen and paper. Logan couldn't stand it and shouted that they should just take her away and bring him what he was asking for. Rick returned with a huge amount of paper and a quill, placing them on the table. Logan thanked Rick and said that he could go and let no one come to him. Rick was confused. Logan had just thanked him. Maybe everything wasn't so good with him? Maybe he still had a headache for saying such strange things? Logan yelled at Rick, saying that he was fine and to leave him alone. Finally, the protagonist's request was fulfilled. He was left alone with himself and his thoughts. However, through the closed door, he heard Rick's voice, who said that the young master was fine since he yelled at him. Logan realizes he's going to have to be patient. It's all a consequence of his own actions. What was more important was to write down what would happen in the future, a war against the Empire in 10 years, a disaster that will destroy not only his family, but the entire nation. His goal is to prevent these disasters. But first, there was one more problem to deal with. The vassal war will take place in a year, will begin suddenly, and will partially destroy the Logan family, for which the dark times will then begin. The war with the Empire would come in 10 years, but the vassal war was just around the corner, so preventing it was the first priority. To prevent the war, Logan needs to talk to a man who can help with that. The scene changes, and we find ourselves in another room. A man with a cape on his back stood and gazed out the window. He would have continued to look out the window, but Logan came to him to see him. Heard a familiar voice. The man turned around, and we see Logan's father. But first, let's go back to the recent past. Logan slowly walked towards his father. A look of fear appeared on the faces of the maids, who noticed Logan, and their bodies trembled like aspen leaves. Everyone tried to take their eyes off the young master. The notoriety and consequences of how he mistreated servants in his past life did not pass without leaving a trace. Everyone tried to avoid Logan, afraid of inadvertently getting themselves into trouble. One of the maids was calmly walking with a mountain of laundry, but when she saw Logan at the same moment, she was confused and felt a feeling of fear. She could not stand on her feet and fell, dropping the entire pile of laundry that she was carrying. Her body trembled, and she wondered how she managed to fall in front of the young master. Anticipating the coming punishment, she decided that she would be finished, and Logan would do something terrible. However, instead of scolding or blaming the maid in any way, Logan extended his hand and asked if she was hurt. Not expecting such a responsive reaction, the maid thanked the main character for his kindness. But literally the next moment, the smile that appeared on her face disappeared. Logan seemed to be looking at her with the eyes of a mad beast, and his smile sparkled with an animal grin. With such a terrible expression on his face, Logan told the maid that there was no need to worry about what happened. Deciding that Logan was going to punish her, the maid immediately fell to her knees and begged for mercy. Logan's abrupt change of character seemed strange to the others. No wonder they reacted that way if they saw Logan. It would take a long time for them to get used to it. The main character could only wait and show the others that he had become different. He was sure that the maid couldn't have reacted so fearfully because of his creepy smile, but maybe she could have. We are transported to the moment when there were only seconds left before Logan and his father met. One of the house servants came to the door and told the owner that the first young master had come to meet him. So much time has passed, so much has happened, and now Logan has a chance to meet his father. In his previous life, Logan resented his father for many years after he drove him away. He considered his father a cold-blooded man who had ceased to have hopes for his son. For Logan, for many years, his father was a cruel man who callously cast out his own child. In those years, he was especially upset by the fact that his father did not even come to see him after he lost consciousness due to an injury in a duel. Only after going through a thorny, long and difficult path, filled with pain and despair, Logan realized how stupid he was for thinking such things about his father. The need to send his own son away would break any parent's heart. It is unknown how the main character found himself at precisely that moment in history when his family was soon to turn away from him. And now, he has a chance to change everything. Finally, he could talk to his father. After many years of wandering on the path of revenge against the Empire, hearing his son's voice, the man turned around. And now we return to the moment of Logan's meeting with his father. Seeing his father in the first seconds, Logan felt happiness, but also soon felt grief for the lost family in his past life. He was sorry, very sorry for what happened. The heavy burden that fell on his shoulders was difficult to describe in simple words. The owner of the house of the McLean barony, Patrick McLean, was a man who did not like long and meaningless conversations, so he immediately asked his son why he had come to him. Logan, of course, expected this, but his father really kept his distance. Logan said that he came to ask permission to do solitary training near the family cemetery. Patrick's gaze flashed for a moment with the interest that arose after such a request from his son. We already remember that the main character decided to prevent the coming wars, but what is needed to win a regional war? The answer is simple. Improve all the territory's forces, make knights and guards more powerful, strengthen and create new weapons, and many other elements. But to implement all this, Logan need money, and a lot of it. However, in Ares, the McLeans are known as a poor family. To put it simply, they have no money. But there is one way to instantly gain such huge money. Thanks to an event that will occur in 3 months, Logan will be able to receive the amount of the annual family budget. But to do this, Logan needs to hone his fighting skills and gain the right to vote. Patrick thought about Logan's words and asked him if he wanted to run away because he lost to his younger brother. Logan explains that it's not that he's trying to run away like a coward. He realized how far behind he was, and, albeit late, he drew conclusions. Logan's lack of tenacity was not the only problem, and it seems that Logan still has not come to his senses. For Logan, it was quite expected that his father would not believe him so easily. He said he understood that another significant problem was his inappropriate behavior. Patrick was getting tired of the conversation. All Logan did was always talk, but didn't say anything meaningful. He turned around and told Logan to get out of his room immediately. The consequences overtook him constantly. Instead of admitting his flaws, Logan took his anger out on others. Besides this, he was incredibly stupid and childish. His father's distrust was understandable to him. Too many unpleasant events had happened, but he did not give up and tried to explain that training would help him take control of himself. All he needed was his father's permission. Patrick thought about it and said that this time, Logan's words didn't sound like a flimsy excuse. He asked his son how long he planned to train. Logan said about 3 months. Deciding that the eldest son wanted to catch up with the youngest, Patrick asked Logan if he thought that this period would be enough for such a task. Logan replied that his goal was not to defeat his younger brother. He set a short period to simply make the most of it. These words made the serious and gloomy Patrick smile. Finally, he noticed that Logan had indeed changed a little, so he granted him permission to conduct training. But before Logan left the room, Patrick stopped him. Spring was already in full swing outside, but the earth was still too cold to sleep on. The father asked his son to try not to freeze. Logan smiled and said that he would try to fulfill the request. The story continues a few days later. The main character headed to a place not far from the family cemetery, taking with him a sword and a leather backpack. Only immediate family members were allowed there, so no one would disturb him. Moreover, there is plenty of space for solo training. Moreover, he could not allow anyone to see his teaching methods. So such a quiet and distant place from prying eyes was ideal for this. Opening his backpack and sorting through his things, he found a huge book. Secrets of the Divine Sword. In a past life, Logan memorized and burned this manuscript so that it would not go to the Empire. Initially, the cover of the book was decorated with a golden falcon. The content described the secrets passed down by a hero of ancient times who defeated the evil dragon that ruled the world. He encrypted the manuscript using the secret code of the Independent Army so that no one could read it. In his past life, he had the ability to learn the manuscript by heart, but not to test it in practice. If the book didn't lie, after he mastered what it said, the aura masters of the Empire and even the archmages would no longer be scary to him. But now he has a chance. The life energy that changes the body was called power in this world. It was the foundation of the secrets of the divine sword. He had to concentrate this power in his heart and create a core. It was not an easy task. But as expected, after returning to the past, he felt as if the power was working to its full potential. 3 days and nights of hard work will be enough. Suddenly, something surprised the main character. He looked closely and saw that the core had already been created. He expected that this would take at least several days, but the result exceeded expectations. While it was emerging, extremely dense energy began to boil. The body absorbed energy, like the earth absorbed rain after a long drought. One of the stages of the 3-month training was successfully completed. It was time to test the combat skills. Logan got into a fighting stance. He threw away all distractions, seeing only the goal in front of him. Logan swung his sword and with one blow split the stone into many fragments. The result was more than amazing. His physique and feelings had completely changed. They adjusted to the need to master the sword. Logan still had no idea how the power core was created so quickly. But at this rate, in 3 months he will become much stronger. This meant only one thing: to continue training and achieve results no matter what. Logan trained hard until the night, not giving himself any rest. It's been 3 months of hard work with one goal: to get better and stronger. The last training day has arrived. From the 10 sword techniques recorded in the secret manuscript, he learned the strike that transcends space and time. Space-time cut. With a single 1-star core, he could only reproduce the technique. He again threw away everything that distracted him. Seeing only the desired goal in front of him, Logan struck with a cleaving wave. The wavy rift was heading towards a huge tree, which Logan chose as a target to test his strength. He put all his power into the blow. Logan didn't do it easily. It took a lot of time to get this result, but it was worth it. A huge tree, which had probably stood in this place for centuries, was split in two by the blow of the main character. This even made him laugh. The strength exceeded all his expectations. A beginner cannot easily master such a complex technique. Even though he spent all his strength after the first blow, it was nice to have such an ace up his sleeve in case of need. Logan achieved his training goal and could proudly report the results to his father. But before the visit, it was necessary to wash off. Grueling and long training did not have the best effect on Logan's smell. Logan soon reached home. But a knight stood in his way and asked Logan to leave, saying that his master could not meet him. Why is it that all of a sudden the father can't see his son? He's not feeling well? The knight says that the law of the family states that even direct relatives cannot meet the owner without prior notification. Rick reminded Logan that this law was hundreds of years old, but Logan wondered why he met his father without any problems 3 months ago. The knight said that this means that the guard did not do his job that day. Logan remembered an interesting detail. In his previous life, something like this didn't happen. No one even dared to stop him if he wanted to go somewhere. Suddenly he heard someone talking. After listening, he realized that the sound was coming from the house. It seems the power has made his hearing sharper. He could clearly hear what the guards on the floor above were saying. They were heatedly discussing the recent incident of how Logan, like a coward, ran away after losing to his younger brother. The knight who blocked his way believed that the boy would do no harm. Logan sadly realized that his reputation had fallen to rock bottom while he was training. So low that even the knights of his own family mocked him. The knight, who did not let Logan into the house, told Logan to return when he was given official permission. Everything that happened was certainly unpleasant. He planned to demonstrate how he had changed and gradually improve his reputation. But the situation turned against him, and he needed to find a different approach. Logan told the knight to state his name. The knight introduced himself. His name was Dominion. At the same time, Dominion looked at the main character with a somewhat puzzled look and tried to understand what he was taking out of his jacket. Logan expressed his dissatisfaction with the knight for preventing him from meeting his father, citing the law of the family, which had practically become obsolete. Not only that, he also humiliated him with his arrogant behavior. The knights above eagerly listened to what was happening below. Rick sensed that the situation was getting tense and tried to calm the young master. Dominion wondered, why the hell did the kid suddenly decide to use his authority? He throws the leather gloves in Dominion's face. For unfair insults, he, Logan McLean, heir to the House of McLean, challenged Dominion to a duel. The knights watched what was happening with even greater eagerness. Logan asked the knight why he was silent. Was he really scared? What Rick feared happened. He tried to prevent the coming conflict, but failed to do so. Logan said that since Dominion didn't even say a word, it was safe to assume his best years were behind him. But they weren't. He accepts the challenge. Each of them had their own goal to win the upcoming duel. The Dominion had their own goal to defend the right to be called a knight and preserve knightly honor. Logan had to prove to everyone that he had changed. Before the duel could begin, a weapon had to be chosen. Logan chose a wooden sword. The knights who were watching Logan and Dominion didn't believe that the young lord would fight Dominion, but they believed that he would lose very quickly. To them, Logan looked like a coward who went into hiding for 3 months after losing to his younger brother to avoid being seen by him. One of the knights bet 50 gold coins that Logan would not be able to stand on his feet for 10 minutes. The second knight laughed at his comrade and bet 100 gold that Logan would lose within 5 minutes. As Logan's hearing improved with his strength, he heard every word the knight said. It is fashionable to say that no one believed in his victory. We hear Dominion's voice saying that the young master looks relaxed. He asked Logan to take care of himself. He said this with such a terrible expression on his face that one could safely copy horror pictures from him. Logan was amused that the Dominion had the nerve to agree to the fight, but he was afraid to say nasty things in front of the other knights. Although he posed as a majestic knight, but for Logan, he was nothing more than a cowardly man. What Rick tried to prevent happened. The young master went to a duel. From the excitement that overwhelmed him, he even lost the ability to breathe for a few seconds. He was so worried about Logan. Logan and Dominion came face to face, and the judge announced the official start of the duel between Logan McLean and Dominion. For safety reasons, the duel was conducted with wooden swords. A thought arose in the judge's head. Maybe it's worth ending the duel before it starts? But seeing the decisive look of the main character, the judge realized that Logan was not going to retreat. The judge knew that Logan was very stubborn, and he had no choice but to start a duel. Although they were given wooden weapons, the knights mainly relied on strength, so even with such weapons, they were capable of killing a person. He waved his hand and officially began the duel, asking Dominion to go easy on Logan. Logan and Dominion jumped to a safe distance. Both took a fighting stance, each of them watching the actions of the enemy. The Dominion stood firmly on its feet, as if digging them into the ground. A red aura surrounded him, and the air around him became heavier. The knights realized that Dominion had decided to go all out since he was going to use force against the common man. Rick became nervous. Without controlling his actions, he began to bite his nails from great excitement. The judge again asked Dominion to be gentle with Logan. Logan understood the fear of those around him. For them, the use of force looked like something unimaginable. But for Logan, the Dominion did not look so intimidating. He clumsily handled power, and it came from him in such a stormy and chaotic flow due to the lack of control. Unlike his opponent, Logan was calm and focused. He said that he saw Dominion feeling aggressive. Did something upset him? Logan's words awakened a new wave of rage in the Dominion, already overwhelming his mind. But it was Logan's words about his best years being behind him that made him especially angry. Dominion, at 40, was the weakest in the order of knights and was planning to retire. He simply minded his own business, awaiting retirement, without any hope of accomplishing any grandiose feats. But he could not forgive the insult received from the main character. To hear such a thing from a man who was a real coward for him was akin to the worst humiliation. He went on the attack first. Rick became more and more nervous and asked the judge to stop the fight, otherwise the young master would die. The judge said that no matter how much he wanted, he would not be able to somehow influence the outcome. Logan himself agreed to this. It is unlikely that they will be able to do anything. Dominion has already decided to retire anyway. Therefore, he wanted to finish off Logan with a secret technique. Logan was in no hurry, did not run away, but stood calmly and studied his enemy. After waiting for the right moment, he applied a great triple kill and struck the Dominion. At the same moment, Dominion experienced a feeling of pain, burning and penetrating his entire body. He was unable to hold the weapon and dropped the sword. The Dominion fell to its knees, and the protagonist stood majestically above it as a conqueror. For Logan, this was a real insult. The Dominion called itself a knight. But was that really its maximum? If so, that's a real shame. The knights could not believe their eyes. Just before their eyes, the one in whom they saw only a loser, unable to defeat even his younger brother, dealt with the Dominion in an instant. The servants and the judge experienced similar sensations. It was hard to believe what they saw. Logan, the one in whom most did not believe, was able to defeat the knight with one blow. Everything happened so quickly that no one even had time to keep track of how the main character managed to win. But what surprised them even more was not the fact of victory, but the fact that Logan used force. Logan called the judge, and he came running very quickly. For him, the first duel was not even close to a duel, so he decided to give the Dominion a second chance, and asked the judge if it was possible. The judge said that it was possible, then ran up to Dominion and asked if he was okay. The Dominion was at a loss, did not understand what the hell happened. Was he overcome by the one he mocked? He couldn't just accept the fact of his defeat. The picture of how he lost to Logan simply did not fit in his head. The desire to teach a lesson to the main character again awakened in him the desire to fight until victory. However, the Dominion relied too much on fury, and this became its fatal mistake. Logan was calm and focused the entire time. And just like the first time, he waited for the right moment and delivered one precise but powerful blow. As it turned out, it may be that the knight was defeated by the one who was considered a non-entity. Logan won this fight without even really fighting. He hoped that the Dominion would show its true strength. It even granted him a second chance for this. Logan received was an opponent who was unable to withstand even more than one blow. Dominion still couldn't believe his defeat. Whether he wanted it or not, having accepted the fact that Logan had defeated him twice with one blow, he admitted defeat. But it looks like Logan wasn't going to stop there. He showed enough mercy to a vassal who tried to rebel against his lord. Now it's time to get what he deserves. Logan gripped the wooden sword as tightly as he could, and then he began to inflict a numerous series of blows on the Dominion, with such speed that it did not even have time to defend itself in any way, although it probably no longer had any strength left. For those watching the fight, such a beating looked too cruel, Rick asked the judge. Maybe after all it's worth stopping the fight. The knights couldn't believe how much Logan had changed in 3 months. He not only awakened the power, but even completely redesigned the sword technique. To them, he looked like a swordsman who had been fighting for decades. Now the duel could finally be considered over. The judge solemnly announced Logan McLean is the winner of the duel. After the duel, Logan, as planned, went to his father, who already knew about the duel, but also asked what happened during training. Logan realized that his father had been watching them the entire time. He says that he has gotten rid of self-interest and is ready to let go of the past. While working with his thinking, at some point, he felt how power began to fill him. It was an incredible feeling. In his past life, this is exactly how he felt everything. Only after refusing to take revenge on his family did he gain strength. Logan remembers that in his past life, he barely managed to awaken after 40. He listens as his father says that he has come to an understanding that Logan has truly changed. However, there is one but. Patrick was outraged by the fact that the first thing Logan did after gaining understanding was to attack the knight. Logan explained that the Dominion deserved it. He asked his father if he had heard the whole story from the guards. Yes, he heard, and yet he asked whether it was necessary to go that far. Yes, it was necessary. Oh, really? Said Patrick. The Dominion deserved to be punished. He tried to deceive his master's son and make him a laughing stock. If Logan hadn't stopped this, the Dominion would have undermined the discipline in their home. Hierarchy is the pillar that allows the entire structure to function. It was structured so that everyone knew their responsibilities and who to obey. But as soon as the hierarchy is shaken, the balance is disrupted and plunges the entire structure into chaos. In addition, over 10 years of life as a mercenary, Logan realized that when it comes to a group of armed people, self-will must be nipped in the bud. Today's incident will serve as a lesson to the rest of the knights. Logan's father says Dominion was definitely wrong. He forgot his duties and tried to fool his son, for which he paid. But Logan overdid it, and Patrick told him to control himself and not let his rage cloud his judgment. Logan was surprised at how easily his father forgave him. "What, do you want to get punished?" Patrick said, noticing his son's long silence. Logan waved his hands and said that he didn't want this at all. Patrick did not consider his son's action to be correct. He demanded that Logan not make such mistakes again and not do anything like that without his permission. Moreover, Logan still has not officially received his rank. From Logan's look, one could understand that he took his father's words seriously and said that he would remember them. There was something else he needed to know. Patrick says that Logan's fiancée, Rena, is coming to visit them soon. Hearing this name, Logan tensed a little. This could be seen from the slight trembling of his body and gaze. He thought to himself that she would finally arrive. His cash cow. It seems she was related to the very event, thanks to which Logan will be able to get money to carry out his plans. Soon Rena arrived at the McLean house. She left the carriage and headed towards the main gate, accompanied by knights. Seeing Mrs. Rena, the maids opened their mouths in surprise. The guards also could not take their eyes off the young lady. Each of them thought to himself that Logan was incredibly lucky to have such a beauty. Rena greeted Lord McLean and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. First, she asked if he was doing well. Patrick laughed a little and said that Rena had become a real lady. Rick, too, could not take his eyes off the young beauty. He saw her in childhood, but now she has grown into an incredible beauty, who with her presence alone attracted the attention of all the knights and servants of the house. But something was bothering Rick. For some reason, the man who should have looked the happiest in the world looked very gloomy. After the greeting, Rena took a letter from the maid, which the Count had personally entrusted to her. The letter began with a greeting from Rena's father to Lord McLean. The letter was so long that even half an hour later, Rena continued to read it. The knight was already quite tired of standing and listening to an unrelated speech, but alas, they were obliged to stand guard. And at this very moment, Rena moved on to the main point of the letter. Due to unavoidable circumstances, he, Chiron Wolves, asked to end the engagement. This was the end of the letter. Rena rolled it up and gave it to the maid. There was an oppressive pause in the hall, as Rena had just brought not the best news. The main character understood that Rena's father was beating around the bush, trying to present the unpleasant news as gently as possible, but in fact, he meant something else. Logan imagined his image in his head like this. Chiron thought that Patrick would become an aura user, but he had already been at the level of a high-ranking knight for 2 decades. And Logan, especially, looked even worse to him. Then the question is, why should they lower the bar and team up with the McLeans? And in order not to complicate his life, he decided to cancel Logan and Rena's engagement. That's what Chiron really wanted to say. House Wolves came to the McLeans with news of the engagement breaking off without proper reason. Is this really how they tried to insult the McLean family? Such thoughts made Patrick seriously angry. Just the sight of an angry lord made the soldiers tremble. They feared him so much and at the same time respected him. Rena says that she guessed that Patrick would interpret the news this way, and therefore asked to be allowed to personally deliver the message in order to resolve any misunderstanding. Droplets of tears appeared in her eyes. She says that the memories of how she lived with them for a whole year as a child still linger in her memory. The moments created with young Master Logan in this beautiful and serene place were treasured by her young mind. She has no desire to forget them, but unfortunately, she had strong ties to her family, and therefore was obliged to follow her instructions. She felt it best to personally apologize to the McLeans and young Mr. Logan. The maids almost burst into tears at such eloquent words. For them, the young lady's heart was as beautiful as her appearance. Logan, meanwhile, was far from happy about this news. It was clear from the expression on his face. A woman standing next to Logan's father asked Rena what was the reason for breaking off the engagement. She would like to hear about these unavoidable circumstances mentioned in the letter. For a moment, a ray of fear seemed to flash in Rena's eyes, albeit a little, but it looked like she was afraid of this woman. Her name was Marjane Kiros, Logan's stepmother and Ronian's biological mother. She had long considered Logan an enemy because of the issue of an heir, and so she thought he would not interfere. But family honor was another matter, and she could not remain silent. Rena, with a saddened look, says that she cannot tell anything since she herself did not know the reason for such a difficult decision. Logan's stepmother asked her if she understood correctly that Rena did not know the details regarding her marriage. Rena says that she is destined to get married and become part of another family. Her father did not discuss important decisions with her. One might say he decided her fate with his own hands. If so, then it turns out that Rena came to talk about the termination of the engagement without giving a reason. Rena says that in exchange for breaking the engagement, their house intends to pay compensation. The amount of this compensation was 3 million gold coins. The financial manager of the McLean home, Dwayne Filsner, was shocked at the amount named, and only after that the main character smiled. Now all he had to do was get this money in order to realize his plans. But Patrick didn't seem to like this option. It was as if a raging beast had awakened in him. The knights were already afraid of him, let alone the state, when he was almost at the peak of anger. Rena was also afraid of the protagonist's father, and the knight took her aside. Rockfern, a knight of the House of Wolves, called out to Patrick. He asked him to calm down and continue the conversation. Patrick was impressed that such a young guy was a high-ranking knight. Just like Patrick himself, Patrick believed that injuring the rising star of the Wolves' house would serve as a partial bargaining chip for the destruction of the McLean's dignity. Rockfern realized that he was dealing with no ordinary person, and a simple request to calm down did not lead to results, but he did not despair. He says that the head of their house calls Patrick a man of honor. In addition, he said that Patrick would not persecute the young lady and the younger knight. Rena entered the dialogue. She says they're not trying to buy the McLean's honor with money. She asked to be accepted as a sign of a sincere attempt to maintain friendship between the houses, despite the impending public criticism due to unavoidable circumstances. Rage raged inside Patrick. His blood boiled in his veins, but he understood that if he continued to put pressure on Rena and Rockfern, he would become a dishonest person. Was this really what Kieran wanted by sending his 2 children here? Patrick took a deep breath and calmed down. He says that a guest remains a guest, even if he brings not the most pleasant news. He assured that the McLean house would not oppress them, but he also refused to accept the Wolves' proposal, and only asked for one thing in exchange for breaking the engagement. Rena was sent to politely apologize to his son. He refused to accept any other compensation. The knights saw in their lord a real aristocrat, who was ready to defend the honor of his home and family by any means. All this time, Logan was silent and closely observed the surrounding situation, but due to special circumstances, he intervened in the conversation. As someone worried about a broken engagement, he wanted to ask his father something. The situation was not in his favor, and they really needed the 3 million gold coins offered. Was his father going to let them just apologize? Real madness. 3 million is the annual budget of their home. In addition, half of the amount came from his stepmother's family as assistance. As soon as they stop providing it, they will become bankrupt. And then what? Logan's father didn't understand what he was doing. They must get these 3 million at any cost. Logan says he would like to accept the offer from the Wolves' house. The perplexed Patrick looked menacingly at his son and asked if he really wanted to force him to back down from his words. Logan was dealing with a man of principle who valued the honor of his home above all else. It put a lot of pressure on him, even without the aura. Logan understood perfectly well that if he couldn't turn everything in the right direction now, he would never move forward. Patrick says that their house is not so poor that they would give up honor for money. Logan calmly inhaled and then exhaled. Father is wrong. Their house is poor enough. They owe the bank 3 million. The annual interest was approximately 150,000. Without the support of Rena's father, they were doomed to become bankrupt. After this, the McLean house will become the house of the poor, and they will be finished. Logan would have liked to say so directly, but it was no more than imagination, and since this was an official meeting, he would have to hold back and speak more formally. Logan says the reason they have to accept the 3 million is because of honor. Patrick asks if this means that for the sake of Logan's honor, he wants him to go back on his words. Logan pointed out to his father the unpleasant but undeniable fact that the House of Wolves was superior to them. In addition to this, the Earl ruled the East, and although his forces are located there, they do not serve him. Logan was afraid that a simple apology would spread the rumor that they were trying to please the Wolves. Rena intervened in the dialogue between Logan and Patrick, saying that their family was reasonable. They have great respect for the honor of the House of McLean. To Logan, it was nothing more than idle chatter. She arrived to break the engagement, but continued to insist on reasonableness. He asked the young lady not to expose herself to ridicule. In his previous life, he believed that Rena was sincerely upset about the inevitable breakup between them. Before the engagement broke, one event happened. We find ourselves in an episode from Logan's past life. He met with Rena in one of the rooms. She thanked him and said that they would part today. But she wanted to create one last memory with him before their fates went their separate ways. Logan truly believed that Rena was saddened by the news of the dissolution of the engagement. Having sincere feelings for her, he decided to risk everything for the woman he loved, and the decision to escape seemed to him the best. He was ready to leave everything just to be with his beloved, but that same day he was cruelly betrayed. Rena took out a hidden knife and threw it at the main character. The entire familiar world collapsed before his eyes. The woman he loved with all his heart betrayed him. Luckily, his basic sword skills and reflexes helped him deflect the knife in time, saving him from serious injury. Rena revealed her true appearance, instead of the sweet and beautiful young lady that everyone around her saw, and especially Logan. He saw the living embodiment of betrayal, deceit, greed, and lies. She didn't plan to marry Logan from the beginning. She was very amused by the fact that Logan lost to his younger brother, especially since he took out the sword himself and made her task easier. After that, Rena screamed at the top of her lungs. One of the knights immediately came running to help. With tears in her eyes, Rena blatantly lied that Logan suddenly began to behave aggressively and then attacked her. Logan was guilty of many things, and his family no longer trusted him. As a result, the McLeans had to apologize to Wolves and pay huge compensation. Because of her, Logan could no longer trust women. In each of them, he saw a potential traitor who would stick a knife in the back at any moment. He did not doubt for a second that Rena planned to profit this time and run away, having achieved a break in the engagement. But now he knew who she really was, and he had a chance to turn everything in his favor. At first, Logan planned to change his reputation in the family. It seemed to him that if he slowly showed himself from a new side, it would convince people about him. And one day the family would reconsider their attitude towards him. These were his thoughts. But the fight with the Dominion made it clear that the guards were turning a blind eye to the fact that he was clearly being disrespected. During his absence, rumors spread throughout the castle like parasites. He wondered if it was possible to influence a family by gaining recognition from such people. There were 9 months left before the regional war, and due to the upcoming event, his reputation was not that important. The most important thing is to save the family. Logan tells Rena that he accepts the offer of compensation, despite the family's wishes. Rena was surprised by this decision. She hoped to pay off with a couple of eloquent words and then leave, forgetting Logan forever. Logan's father was also not happy. His son dared to defy his will. Logan understood his father's indignation, but explained that empty apologies, not worth a penny, did not suit him. If their honor is worth just a few words that will disappear into thin air, then its value is equally weightless. Rena could barely contain her anger. It seems that she did not expect the main character to act this way. She says that they obey only the will of the Lord, the owner of the McLean house. Rena asks Patrick what his final decision is. She hoped that Patrick, unlike Logan, would fall for her trick and agree to accept an apology as a couple of flattering words instead of real money. Rena said this to save her father's reputation. She was probably bursting inside with the thought that she would have to pay 3 million gold. Patrick thought for a few seconds and said that as a representative of the House of McLean, a sincere apology would be enough for him. But that was not all. The knights froze, waiting for what their lord would say. Although Patrick was the head of the house, since the current events largely concerned Logan, he gave him the right to make the final decision. Logan's stepmother did not take this news enthusiastically. The knights and servants immediately began to whisper among themselves. Rena barely restrained herself from showing her true essence, but this was a meeting of aristocrats. Showing herself from the best side was a priority for her. But before the main character made a decision, his father asked him to be careful. If he agrees to sell his honor, then in the future, he will be more willing to agree to such an exchange. Patrick fell silent, waiting for Logan to make a decision. Logan understood that the upcoming decision would hurt his father's heart, but he was forced to take this step. As someone who suffered from a broken engagement, He agreed to accept money from the wolf's house as compensation. Logan's stepmother looked askance at him, expressing her displeasure, but Rena felt more resentment than anyone else. She had hoped that Patrick and his supposedly silly son would agree to a few flattering words instead of money, but the protagonist ruined her devious plans in a flash. As expected, Logan's father was disappointed with his son's decision. He believed that Logan had changed at least a little, having left to train for 3 months, but it turned out that only for the worse. Patrick blamed himself for not teaching Logan the true value of honor. The protagonist was uncomfortable to see a disappointed father who recently was willing to put his faith back in him. But this move is for the good of their own family. Logan soon received the promised 3 million gold coins, the annual budget of the McLean house shone before him. If not for his sad experience in a past life, they would have eagerly accepted Rena's empty apologies. But fortunately, he did everything right. Seeing such a huge amount of money, he had a desire to spend it for fun. But taking his hands, he calmed down and convinced himself that he should not be too excited about such a huge amount. First, he decided to put the coins in the bank. Hearing a knock on the door, Logan decided that Rick had come to him. Logan allowed entry, the door opened, and a man entered the room, whose voice and clothes did not resemble Rick. Logan quickly recognized him. It was Dwayne, the finance manager. Considering the position he held, Dwayne was his father's most trusted confidant. In other words, he came to Logan with a smile for a reason. What does he need? Such a question arose in Logan's head. There was no way a money manager would just come to a person who had just received 3 million gold coins. In Dwayne's mind, that he was now facing the greatest challenge of his life. As McLean's financial manager, he had to cut the budget for the entire castle. Before, he'd had to make up for the lack of money by begging his father-in-law for help. The question was, is he a money manager or a leader of the poor? If this wasn't his hometown, he would have quit a long time ago, but a ray of hope flashed in his eyes. There was a chance to settle the troubled situation in the house for at least a couple of years. From Dwayne's point of view, his opponent was a clueless child. He came to Logan with the sole purpose of taking the money, if not all, then at least part of it, in order to solve the problems at home. But first, he needed to gain Logan's trust. So he started by saying he was just stopping by to say hello. He admired how the young master, despite his father's will, defended his position, not paying any attention to unreasonable pressure. He says that he is shocked by what kind of heir the McLeans are growing up, the proud future of the family. Dwayne was counting on the fact that such flattery would help him earn Logan's trust. Before, all he did was do all sorts of nonsense. Dwayne was probably the first to praise him. However, instead of enjoying the flattery, like a stupid and unconscious child, Logan asked Dwayne what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Dwayne was not prepared for such a reaction, but he was not taken aback and continued. He says that in their difficult times, 3 million gold is like rain during a drought. He also says that Logan's savvy will allow the family to breathe a sigh of relief. Logan then asks why, since the money belongs to him. These words were like a clap of thunder from a clear sky. Dwayne expected this outcome, but it was worth a try. In front of him, he saw a terribly greedy man who was proud of his title and was going to spend money on entertainment to satisfy his arrogant ego. Dwayne shuddered at the thought that Logan was going to spend all the coins he received on himself, but he tried not to panic. He remembered the 20 years of his life as the McLean finance manager. In difficult times, he came to the Viscount, begging him to help. The Viscount asked not to arrange such a theatrical scene, but Dwayne always tried to help the McLean house, being ready to even humiliate himself in front of other people. Humiliation had actually become the norm for him, but deciding that the selfish Logan was going to waste all the gold coins, Dwayne could not stand it and burst into tears, covering his face with his hand. Logan immediately noticed this. Was it really that bad financially? Dwayne reminds Logan that their house owes the bank 3 million. The annual interest alone would be 150,000 gold. Logan, without saying a word, listened carefully to Dwayne. One thing he didn't understand was that now was harvest time, and Dwayne could easily pay the interest to the bank. Dwayne was confused. How did Logan know so much? Dwayne decided to refer to the fact that, as a rule, managing a barony requires a lot of money, and money has been poor lately. But if Logan helped a little, then the problems would be less. Logan slightly bowed his head, and asking for forgiveness, said that he could not help. Dwayne is at a loss. He believed that Logan opposed his father for the good of the barony. That's right. That's how it happened. He intended to use the money for the benefit of the family and not to cover current expenses. He needed to think about the future. Dwayne didn't understand what some brat could know about the future. Suppose Logan pays off his debts, but how will this change the overall situation in the family? Dwayne makes the argument that their budget will increase and the castle will become easier to manage over the next couple of years. Okay, but what then? They'll be in debt again, right? They don't even have any special items for sale. This is a vicious circle that the main character was determined to break. The money received will be used to implement his plan. Dwayne was incredibly surprised by what he heard. Is this really the bully he knew for many years? He imagined Logan as a child who did not care about the problems of the family, but Logan thought completely differently, maybe not quite like Dwayne in the short term, but the future of the McLean house was no less important to him than to Dwayne. Logan says that if Dwayne does him a favor, he can help cover some of the family expenses. Dwayne asks what service needs to be performed. Logan smiles and asks Dwayne to gather some mercenaries. The story continues after some time. Rick noticed Logan's packed briefcase and asked if he was really leaving. Logan answered in the affirmative, to which Rick, as a person worried about Logan, asked what was happening to him. He had only recently returned from solo training, and now he had decided to go somewhere again. Logan explained the reason for leaving by saying that he had to earn money. Rick didn't understand this decision, because Logan had just recently received as many as 3 million gold coins. Isn't that enough? Logan says he needs a lot more. Rick said that Lord would probably be against Logan's decision. The atmosphere in the castle is too tense after meeting with Mrs. Rena. Logan knew his father very well and understood that he would not approve of such a decision, so he left home secretly. Rick fell into a stupor for a moment. He understood that Logan had the courage to contradict his father's will, but for Logan to leave home without his father's permission, it didn't fit in his head. If he cannot influence his reputation now, then he will not be able to change everything else. It is necessary to organize an army outside. He knew what was happening there, since it was at that time that he was expelled from his home in disgrace. Logan thought to himself that he needed to check on the man first. It seems that this thought was connected with his past life. Persistent Rick refused to simply accept the fact that Logan was leaving without his father's permission. He was ready to do anything to prevent him from escaping, even lying on the floor to block the path to the exit. If Logan needs to get out, he'll have to go through Rick. A few seconds later, a leg in iron armor hung over Rick's head. He decided that Logan was about to slam him into the floor. Logan was no longer that vile boy who treated the servants poorly. He especially appreciated Rick, and said that there was no need to worry. He left a letter for his father, and no one would blame Rick. Rick asked Logan what he wrote in the letter. Logan just smiled in response. Something in the smiling expression on Logan's face alarmed Rick. He soon realized what was written in that letter, and these thoughts did not calm him down. Entering Patrick's office, he saw a man as if surrounded by an aura of malice. With a furious look, Patrick read every word written in the letter. In the letter, Logan said that the breakup of the engagement had broken his heart, leaving a serious wound on his soul, so he decided to go away for a while, promising to return soon. Patrick's voice could be heard outside the castle walls shouting Logan's name. Rick hoped that the main character would return as soon as possible, because seeing the enraged lord was not the most pleasant sight for him. Until 200 years ago, the House of McLean was not in such a position as it is now. A vast and extensive county, it was honored as the ruler and master of the southern part of the Kingdom of Grandia. But the unsuccessful reign of 3 generations before the current Lord Patrick led to his family's demotion in rank and a significant reduction in the territories under their control. Vast grain holdings, once called the McLean Plains, were given to a powerful vassal, and the fertile lands were divided among various landowners. The place where the McLeans ended up was hard, dry land near the southern mountains. There were no worthwhile regional products in this place, nor were there any copper mines typical of the highlands. Under such conditions, even if they win the regional war, they will have to forever turn to Kiros for help. To break the vicious circle, Logan will need a lot of money, much more than 3 million. Here, in the greatest trading city called Kiel, there was someone who would help carry out the plans of the protagonist. The trading city lived its own life, some selling rings with precious stones from the Empire, others selling equipment popular in the north, and others offering customers a taste of fresh fruit. The drive to town reminded Logan of how far away his family was. They, like aristocrats, seemed to be separated from the usual world of trade. If his memory served him right, the man he was looking for spent most of his youth in this city. The townsfolk used to say that the golden beetle, Philip Cloud, lived around here somewhere. The Ares Empire is the strongest nation on the continent with a powerful centralized government that operates on a merit system. Regardless of gender or age, a person with talent could succeed here and enjoy power and wealth. Even foreigners have this right. A great example of this is Philip Cloud from the Kingdom of Grandia. He is one of the richest merchants influencing the empire and the greatest war merchant who is considered a traitor to the Kingdom of Grandia. However, in reality, despite his nickname Golden Bug, Philip was not at all like the man that numerous rumors described him as. He supports his fellow countrymen and uses money and power to make Grandia a sovereign state. And it looks like Logan has finally found this man. But it wasn't the grown man Logan remembered him as, but a boy dressed in the simplest of clothes. The disgruntled guy was saddened by the betrayal that he had just experienced. He didn't even have any money left to somehow live. The main character heard that Philip's business went bankrupt due to deception, but it's a sad sight. Philip, consumed by despair, did not see any further meaning in life, and was ready to go to another world ahead of schedule. But he was distracted from such thoughts by Logan, who turned to him. Logan had no doubt that this was the same person he was looking for, but for the sake of decency, he first asked the guy if he was Philip Cloud. Yes, it was the same Philip who asked Logan who he was. He quickly assessed the situation and looked Logan up and down. Logan says he's glad he was able to find Philip. He asked if Philip had time to talk. Philip acted cautiously, trying to understand who this mysterious young man was who had suddenly shown interest in him. At first, Philip did not understand who approached him, but he noticed one thing. In Logan's gaze, Philip immediately saw what he had encountered many times as a businessman. Greed, a piercing gaze filled with greed, which Philip could not confuse with anything. Philip became wary and decided that judging by the time when the young man approached and his old armor, this was probably a mercenary. Logan was about to start a dialogue with Philip. However, having decided that Logan had come to him for a debt, Philip became seriously angry and told Logan to come only after 3 days, when he would be able to receive proceeds from the sale of commercial property. Logan says that he didn't come to collect the debt from him, but Philip didn't hear anything. He was like a small aggressive dog that did nothing but bark, fearing for his life. From the outside, this spectacle looked funny. It looked like some guy wasn't even trying to restrain his emotions, while the young man was forced to listen to this in silence. All Philip wanted was for Logan to go away and leave him alone. As in the battle with the Dominion, Logan tried to remain calm and honestly asked Philip to calm down, assuring that he did not come for money. On the contrary, he wanted to invest. This is where Philip was surprised. He clearly did not expect something like this, and asked if the young man wanted to invest in him. Logan answered in the affirmative. Finally, Philip realized that Logan had not come for a debt. What a madman, Philip thought to himself, looking at the smiling Logan. He thought Logan was crazy because he decided to invest in someone who had completely failed. But what if this is true? Philip decides to ask how much Logan wants to give for investment. Logan responds by asking Philip how much is needed. Logan figured Philip would have enough money to cover his debts to get back on track. Philip could not believe his ears. Droplets of tears of joy almost appeared in his eyes, but in them was visible a glimmer of hope, instantly lost after the recent betrayal. But Philip did not take his eyes off Logan for a second, and especially paid attention to the stained armor. Philip decided that the young man had come from afar, since along the way he soiled the armor so much with dirt. From the passing wind, the dirt came off a little from the armor, and Philip was able to see the symbol on the armor. Something alarmed him. The smile and joyful look disappeared instantly, replaced by mistrust. Logan didn't pay attention to this and asked Philip how much he needed. He will try to help in any way he can. In a barely audible voice, Philip called Logan a little bastard. Logan froze for a moment in bewilderment. It seems that disappointment returned to Philip again. He saw Logan not as an investor, but as a deceiver like the others. The symbol of the southeastern barony of the McLeans was very familiar to Philip. He also knew that they were a family of poor people who were asking for help from their father-in-law. What kind of investment can there be when the baronial master can't pay his debts? Philip warned Logan that if he's caught impersonating a nobleman, he'll lose his head quickly. And again, Philip returned to the state when he was betrayed in business. He saw in everyone a potential enemy who, at the right opportunity, would try to deceive him. Philip grabbed Logan by the armor and with tears in his eyes shouted that he was completely bankrupt, as one would expect from a future tycoon. Even when he found himself at the very bottom, Philip did not lose his insight. Logan was trying to figure out how to calm a man who was consumed by despair, and there was not enough money, even for food. Logan thought for a moment, and then a decision dawned on him. He spoke again to Philip, who continued to see Logan as a vile deceiver. To get his attention, Logan extended his hand and showed strength. Philip's face shone with surprise. It seemed to him that he was imagining it. He couldn't believe that Logan had awakened the power at such a young age. Is such a genius really trying to trick him? It's unlikely that Philip thought that this was not the person who would decide to ruin his bright future. Philip apologized for his over-emotionalism and for reacting harshly to everything due to his recent troubles, and asked Logan P. what business he had with him. Logan finally saw some progress in his conversation with Philip. He says that he wants to hire Philip forever and promises to pay off his debt with a bonus. This proposal sounded so unusual that Philip decided to ask again if Logan really wanted to hire him forever. McLean House did not have enough money to not only hire him forever, but also to cover the debt. Logan took off his leather backpack and, opening it, asked Philip how much he owed. As far as Logan knew, it was about $250,000, which he promised to pay for the debt and to pay the same amount for Philip and add $50,000 on top as a bonus. Philip was blinded by a bright golden light. Gold coins looked back at him, glistening in the light of day. The total amount came out to 550,000 gold, 250,000 to pay off the debt, and 300,000 to hire Philip, which Logan is ready to pay right away. Philip managed to be disappointed, surprised, then disappointed again, and then surprised again. It was as if the appearance of a savior angel appeared before him. Philip took out a small needle, lightly pierced his finger, and droplets of red liquid poured out. Blood fell onto a sheet of paper, leaving a bright trail. Philip signed a contract with Logan. A sweet young girl, who looks like a witch, says that if a subordinate tries to harm his master, he will feel terrible pain, as if his soul is being torn apart. Essentially, Philip became Logan's subordinate. The girl says that if Philip is not satisfied with this, then let him awaken the power and become at least a high-ranking knight, or pay a magician of the fourth circle and higher to lift the curse. From the expression on Philip's face, one could understand that this was not exactly the outcome he expected. With a lot of questions in his head, he and Logan, who did nothing but smile, left the magic shop, where a cute girl in a witch's hat was happily waiting to meet them again. Did Philip really sign his own death sentence? Philip realized that Logan was not quite the angel that appeared in his head. But he didn't understand one thing. Logan drew up an expensive magical contract to essentially make him his slave. Only for that price he could buy 30 slaves. Logan breaks the silence and says that since they first met, they cannot trust each other. And since the main character was an investor, he needed a guarantee. He agreed to break the contract as soon as he and Philip got to know each other better. He extended his hand and invited Philip to work hard to achieve his goals. All this was somehow strange. Logan spoke evasively, without stipulating any terms or conditions of the contract. But Philip had no choice but to believe him. He got straight to the point and asked Logan what needs to be done. First, Logan asked to buy monster meat. "Wow, he's really crazy," said Philip. Yes, that's right. He didn't say this thought in his head, but said it out loud. Logan immediately noticed this. In any case, he understood the guy's confusion. The blood and meat of the monster contains poison, so it is burned. However, Logan knew the future. In a couple of years, the situation will change dramatically when it becomes known that it is possible to neutralize the poison with ordinary ingredients. In some areas with a shortage of provisions, people will begin to eat monster meat. And already in winter, the number of people cured of incapacity will increase among them. Consuming monster meat will cause Kalok to appear. Even those who have become infertile after being wounded will see an amazing effect. 1 year after the Imperial Magic Tower confirms this, Kalok will disappear from the shelves across the continent. And all because it will have a good effect on male strength. So the main character planned to make many times more money out of 3 million. Philip was still not clear about his responsibilities for such an expensive contract. Well, he will buy meat now, but what next? In a word, Logan has not yet revealed all his cards. An obsessive thought appeared in Philip's head. Maybe he should try to escape? But for now, Philip decided to abandon this idea. They headed to the nearest tavern, where Logan offered Philip to buy monster meat for 1 million gold, which Philip was very surprised by. He thought Logan was crazy and didn't understand who would spend $1 million on monster meat. Logan asked Philip to tone down and explained that they would make money even if he bought even more. Meanwhile, the tavern's visitors eagerly listened to the conversation between Logan and Philip. Philip says that he is against such a decision, but asks Logan if he is sure of his decision. Logan answers in the affirmative. Philip asks what Logan thinks the price range for K-Lock meat is. Logan replies that it's not worth much right now. Everyone just burns it because there are no buyers. Logan believes that if they simply order corpses from someone, it will cost them 200 gold, taking into account the kingdom's transport fees. If they bring a lot of K-Locks at a time, it will be even cheaper due to transportation. Philip replies that it's a little expensive. Logan even took into account the transport fee. To which Logan asks, is this a mistake? Philip says that no. Logan determined the price correctly, but he asks Logan if he plans to hire a guild for hunting with a budget. This is exactly what Logan planned to do. Isn't there something wrong? Philip puts the empty mug on the table and replies that this is a completely wrong approach. Nowadays, everyone is throwing away monster meat, so buying it back will be enough. There are always enough mercenaries ready to bring and sell anything for coin. And if they see that someone else is trying to get rid of the meat, they will simply buy it for Logan. Philip was absolutely sure that if he just asked, the mercenaries would bring to Logan's feet all the K-Lock meat in the kingdom, also divided for convenient packaging. And at this moment, the main character realizes that he has already recouped his cost for Philip, as expected. An amazing little guy who thinks like a real merchant. Philip asked to transfer the right to engage in financial planning to him, since now his fate depended on the fate of Logan. Logan didn't mind at all. Philip showed his best side, and such a thing could be entrusted to him. However, Logan wanted to talk about more than just monster meat. He asks Philip to stay in the city for now and buy things from the list in large quantities. After reading the list, which included shells made from ironwood, which grows in the southern mountains of the Empire, springs and glue, Philip asks Logan if he wants to create toys to sell. Logan replies that there is something better, until he could tell him that all this was raw material for weapons of war. In a past life, weapons made from these materials were used to invade the kingdom of Grandia, and even a pitiful soldier was able to keep a knight under control with it. Logan entrusted Dwayne with recruiting mercenaries, to whom he soon planned to give these weapons to give them an advantage in the regional war. But it didn't end with buying monster meat and raw materials for weapons. You need to find a master who will make weapons, and an instructor who can train mercenaries. 2 days later, the story continues in a mercenary city called Harun. An A-rank mercenary with a patch over his right eye and a cross-shaped scar on his left cheek named Casalon asks Logan if he really wants to hire him as an instructor. He apologizes and says that he has never done anything like this before. Logan replies that it won't be difficult. He just has to train the C-rank mercenaries he hired. Casalon didn't know what Logan had heard about him, but as he said, he was only supervising a couple of kids, and Logan had better seek professional teachers. But Logan approached this particular person for a reason. He worked with him in a past life, so he knew everything himself. Casalon can master any weapon and has excellent horse riding skills. Moreover, its value will increase once you start working as an instructor. After all, the mercenary squad he raised after he was seriously wounded, and his skill after retirement cannot be compared with anything. But now it seems that Casalon was not in the best mood, and Logan decides that it is worth offering him money. He began by offering to pay 4,000 gold to work as an instructor. Casalon was slightly surprised when he heard such a figure. A mercenary of rank A could earn a maximum of 2,000 gold in a month, and Logan offers twice as much. However, he refuses the offer, deciding that this is nothing more than a deception. He politely repeats that he has never worked as an instructor. Logan realizes that 4,000 is not enough, so he offers 6,000 gold. Casalon again refuses, saying that he prefers a mission where he has to fight. It looks like Logan has no choice. He offers 7,000 to work as an instructor. This is where Casalon perked up his ears. Fearing that Logan is just making fun of him, he can barely contain his anger and refuses again. But as soon as Logan offered 8,000 gold for working as an instructor, the angry and distrustful Casalon immediately changed his face, saying that they, however, had the same views. He knelt down on one knee, bowed his head, and thanked his employer for such a generous payment. It's amazing what money can do. Just a minute ago, Casalon flatly refused to accept Logan's offer, but as soon as he offered him a fairly worthy sum, He immediately agreed to carry out the instructions. Walking around the city, during the conversation, Casalon finds out that Logan is the young master of the house of Baron McLean. Logan asks Casalon if he is curious why he took a mercenary from the feudal city of the McLeans. Casalon replies that he has no need to know the details if Logan pays decently. Logan liked this answer. The mercenary had a clear mind. Everything, just as Logan liked. Soon their attention is attracted by a rude male voice heard nearby. They pay attention to a man who wields a whip and drives the crowd in some direction. Apparently these were slaves. There is no doubt left when we see the shackles on their feet. The fact turns out that Harun is called not only a city of mercenaries, but also a city of slaves. And they will see this more often in the future. And all because further away there was a slave market overflowing with slaves. Logan knew about this, clearly not enthusiastically accepting such a terrible fact. But he didn't just happen to be near such a market. He was going to go there and buy one slave. As soon as he entered the market, he attracted the attention of one young guy with blonde yellow hair. Deciding that Logan is a stupid redneck, the guy decides to deceive him and offers to see the slaves at the cheapest price. However, as soon as he saw Casalon, he immediately shut up. With his merciless gaze, Casalon, as if without saying a word, told the guy the following: "If you dare to say one more word, you will soon go to the next world to your forefathers, having experienced the most terrible torment in your life." It seems that Casalon was a fairly well-known figure here because the guy was speechless, fell to his knees, and trembled like an aspen leaf. Now Logan was calmer, not only because he hired a mercenary, but also good personal security. Soon, they reached a tent where there were much more guards than in any other place in the slave market. It seemed that this was the very place where Logan was heading. An elderly man of small stature, with gray hair, approaches Logan and says that the young gentleman surely understands the place he has come to. Logan gets straight to the point and says he wants to buy a dwarf. The old man replies that Logan has come to the right place. Unusual races are very rare, so they take special care of them. Logan walked inside and looked around. His gaze was drawn to the elves, who looked haggard and as if bereft of life. The old man says that it was extremely difficult to catch these elves and asks Logan if he has ever seen them before. He was about to tell a story, but Logan interrupted him. He pointed to the gnome and asked him to bring him. The old man, who apparently sometimes had memory lapses, remembered that the young master came here for the gnome. Like all other slaves, his legs were shackled, and the hands are shackled with 2 fastened wooden boards with holes. It was an old dwarf, shorter than the old man. His face was adorned with a long mustache and beard, and his body had well-developed muscles. The old man says that even among the great dwarven masters, this is one of the few with the rank of expert. The main character is surprised to learn the details about this gnome. By nature, they skillfully use their hands. They create and repair objects, seeing this as the meaning of life from childhood to old age. The rank of expert was well above what Logan was looking for. A satisfied grin appeared on his face. He realized that with this goblin, it would be easier to achieve his goal. He asks the old man for what price he will sell the gnome. Since a dwarf with the rank of expert, the old man names the price at least 200,000. Logan definitely didn't agree to that price. It looked as if the old man saw him as some kind of simpleton. The old man understands that for such a price, the main character will never take the gnome. He agrees and gives the gnome for 50,000 gold. Satisfied and happy, Logan leaves with a beaming smile, and Casalon is surprised at how his employer dropped the price by 150,000 in just a couple of minutes. The dwarf says that Logan is ruthless, to which he replies that it was elementary. The dwarf asks where Logan is taking him. He tells the gnome that he is going to take him to the McLean estate in the southwest, where he will craft items for him. Everything is as the dwarf thought. The owner is looking only for a master who knows how to create various objects. He perceived this fact with sadness in his soul. Even if they are skilled handicraftsmen, this does not apply to those who were sold into slavery. Despite their natural inclinations, without passion, they cannot create real works of art. To restore the dwarf's enthusiasm, Logan must give him the motivation to do so. And it looks like Logan got an idea. He tells the dwarf that if he tries his best for 20 years, he will send him back to the mountains. 20 years is probably nothing for the species of gnomes, right? Apparently Logan's idea worked. Hope and joy, lost from the moment he fell into slavery, shone in the dwarf's eyes. They were about to continue the dialogue to discuss further details, but were distracted by a man's scream that came from somewhere nearby. They turned around and fixed their gaze on the man, who was shouting that the slave was running away. That's right. Just a few meters away from him, a guy was running with a girl on his back. Another proof that this was a slave was the lack of shoes, and the skin seemed to be slightly pale. Logan watched the boy run past. He ran as fast as he could, carrying a girl on his back whose face was still hidden from us. One of the boy's features that we saw was his multicolored eyes, red and blue. Hearing the man shouting for someone to grab the slave, people turned around every now and then. He ran at them like an angry bull, seeing no obstacles. The man continued to run after the boy, but he did not stop for a moment. All he did was run as fast as possible to get away from the slave owner. However, his escape was not destined to come true. A guy came up to him from the other side and kicked him as hard as possible. So much so that the boy fell to the ground along with the girl. A few seconds later, a man with a torn sleeve and bloody marks on his left arm ran up to the guy. "How dare you bite me, you weak-willed scum," the man said angrily. He started kicking the boy, who came to the girl's defense. He endured monstrous pain. Everything in order to protect his dear sister, whose eyes were already welling up with tears. Kaisalon tells Logan that these are just slaves, and there is no need to stop. Such a sight is not uncommon here. The main character knew that these were slaves, but something haunted him, as if some thought was trying to reach him. He pays attention to blue hair and eyes of different colors. Somewhere he has already seen this. It can't be, it's Victor. A perplexed Kaisalon asks, "What's the matter?" And Logan replies that it's nothing serious and asks to give him a minute. Considering that Logan somehow ended up in the past, he was prepared for certain oddities and surprises, but he certainly did not expect to meet a murderer of aristocrats here. In a past life, there lived an extremely famous aura user in the kingdom. First, he was a slave who ran away. He was wanted for the murder of countless soldiers and pursuing knights, as well as aristocrats. He had to hide like a criminal. Approximately 10 years later, when he reappeared, he already used aura, thereby proving that he had risen above ordinary people. He killed the entire family that previously owned it. From then on, driven only by an all-consuming rage, he destroyed every aristocrat he came across in the kingdom, for which he received the unusual nickname, Aura User, killing aristocrats. The incident with the disappearance of this slave happened a year after Logan became a mercenary, so now that boy should not have been bought yet. Logan assesses the situation and understands that if he saves the boy, then in the future he will have a strong aura user on his side. But there is one problem. He is an unstoppable killer maniac. Well, if he's a lethal weapon that kills his allies, he can just be locked up. The man was ready to punish the boy with all cruelty. He raised his leg over the guy's head, preparing to strike, but Logan prevented him from doing so. Filled with rage at the slave's disobedience, the man began to look around, trying to find someone who had the courage to interrupt the punishment. A second later, he found the one who prevented him from carrying out his plan. Logan looked at him with a cold and stern gaze. The man immediately wondered who this young man was, and when did he manage to approach. Soon he noticed the emblem painted on the armor. The man removed his foot, realizing that the main character was a client. He apologized for his excessive emotionality, because when the product did not obey, he tries to educate him. Logan says he wants to buy a couple of slaves. The man asks if he means these children. Their eyes are a rare color, so the price for them will be high. Logan didn't beat around the bush and immediately said to name the price. The man was ready to give them away at a price of 10,000 gold each. From Logan's menacing look, it becomes clear that this price does not suit him. A strong young slave costs about 300 gold, and this idiot raised the price a lot of times for children, of whom all that was left was skin and bones. Of course, 10,000 for a murderer of aristocrats is very cheap, but the man doesn't know about this. As a businessman, he was just trying to make more money, albeit in a very dirty way. But Logan was a man of principle, and even though he had a huge stockpile of gold coins, he wasn't going to let anyone get rich at his expense. Logan points out the fact that the man increased the price 30 times for a child who is about to lose consciousness, and the second one seems to already have one foot in the grave. Tears of despair appeared in the sister's eyes again. She had a chance to see how her brother tried to protect her from bullying, enduring terrible pain. Logan offers 500 gold for each. This price is already higher than for a healthy slave. The man objects, saying that this supposedly won't even cover their original price. However, Logan knew very well how much the goods here cost. He understood the value of every gold coin spent, and if someone had the nerve to deceive him, Logan was willing to pay them back with something worse. The man felt a lump in his throat. His heart almost stopped at Logan's gaze, which seemed to be looking straight into his soul. He hoped to once again deceive an unaware buyer, but he ran into the wrong person. Moreover, he always had nothing but trouble from Victor, and what he was sure of was that it would not get better in the future. He hoped not only to get rid of the annoying problem in the form of a boy who constantly bit him, but also to make good money at the same time. However, he had only one option left: to give away the children at the price that Logan named. After the scuffle, Victor lost consciousness, but soon gradually began to wake up. Kaisalon carried him on his back, and his sister and the dwarf walked behind him. Kaisalon is surprised that Victor woke up so early, because his wounds should not have healed so quickly. Logan also says that Victor really came to his senses quickly. But this was not the result of the miraculous properties of Victor's body. Logan was secretly emitting a power that was barely noticeable as they walked. This is the best magic of most low-level priests. However, Victor's sister acted as if she saw Logan's strength. Even Kaisalon, a rank mercenary, didn't notice, but the little girl did. He did not dwell on this thought and considered it a mere coincidence. Meanwhile, Victor had fully come to his senses. He gathered his strength and jumped off Kaisalon's back. His first target was the main character, whom he wished dead. For Logan, dodging such a simple attack was a piece of cake. He grabbed Logan's hand, squeezing it in a death grip. Victor was completely immobilized in less than a few seconds. Logan then grabbed him by the neck. Victor hung above the ground. It became much harder for him to breathe. And his sister, who was watching what was happening, felt horror. He was ready to give up his life. All he cared about was so that Rhea would have time to escape. "Do I look like a slave owner?" Logan asks Victor. Logan appreciated Victor's fighting spirit, but what he didn't know was how to choose his opponent wisely. Logan hoped that he wouldn't have to warn Victor a second time. If he complied, Logan promised that he and his sister would be safe. But if it happens again, he won't hesitate to get rid of him, and certainly his sister. Logan loosened his grip and let go of Victor. He fell to the floor. He was still having trouble breathing after nearly being strangled by Logan. However, Logan didn't want to harm the boy. He just wanted to teach him a lesson, and that's probably enough. He expresses his desire that he plans to make a knight out of Victor. Victor asks Logan if he is talking about him. That's right, Victor probably knew that a knight is an honorary aristocrat. As a slave, he will be able to circumvent this condition, and his sister too. Victor looked at his sister and thought about everything that had happened over the last rather difficult day. Logan's words seemed to ignite a flame of desire within him. Victor shouted at the top of his voice that he agreed to become a knight. Everything was as Logan expected. Victor, of course, was a difficult boy, but his cruel nature can be controlled through his sister, which he was ready to protect at any cost, even at the cost of his own life. Logan says they will start training when they get home. But first, Logan wants to talk to Hamar alone. Logan left Kaisalon to look after the children, who, as an adult, was certainly up to the task. As for the gnome, Logan wanted to secure their business alliance with a contract. Only this was not a simple contract, but a magical one. It says that if Hamar serves Logan for 20 years, he will send him back to the mountains. Hamar doesn't believe what he sees. Will Logan really bring him back to his people? Noticing the dwarf's surprise, Logan asks if everything is okay. Maybe he doesn't want Logan to sign this contract? Hamar immediately replies that everything suits him. He is ready to do absolutely everything in his power for Logan. 2 streams of tears of joy even flowed down his face. He did not expect to meet a person like Logan. Initially, he did not believe that Logan was telling the truth, but was convinced otherwise. If the contract is enough to restore the dwarf's motivation, then for Logan, it is a big plus. Thanks to this, he will be able to get everything he wants. Moreover, he managed to gain even more since he got the killer of aristocrats. Preparations for war between regions are proceeding smoothly. However, not everything went so smoothly. Unbeknownst to Logan, rumors of his strange behavior have already spread throughout the McLean property while he was away. His reputation had sunk to the bottom and was breaking through him. And Rick, as probably the only person who sincerely cares about the main character, is drowning in turmoil, trying to change something. Soon, what Rick was looking forward to finally happened. The main character finally returned. First of all, he asks Rick how he was doing during his absence. Rick was a little confused when he heard such a question from Logan. He found it hard to believe that Logan was actually interested in how he lived these days. Although he had seen that Logan had changed slightly, he had not yet gotten used to the changed young master. Rick excitedly asks Logan if he knows what people are saying about him. They call him an idiot who spent 150,000 gold on monster meat. To understand what this is all about, let's go back to an event that happened a few days earlier. Philip had gathered a crowd and advertised for the purchase of the monster's meat. People received this news with caution, even rather with great misunderstanding, because it sounded like complete nonsense. They wondered what kind of idiot would take such a step. Philip tells the crowd that young Master Logan of the McLean barony wishes to acquire the monster's meat. People had heard a lot about this man, and not the most pleasant rumors circulated among them. From the latter, they learned that Logan allegedly ruined his engagement. Philip thought that spreading rumors about the monster meat would increase its sales in the market, but he didn't know the details of Logan's past. He thought he was a simple madman, but after hearing some of the details, Philip thought Logan was a real badass. Despite such thoughts, Philip's instincts screamed that he should not miss the opportunity. He says that he is ready to pay 1 gold piece per kilogram of meat. Not a single mercenary will refuse to sell garbage, even to a scumbag, if he is willing to pay. Philip asks a question that interests the crowd, whether they are ready to make money. If they want to get gold coins, then let them bring all the meat of the Kalok to Philip. Inspiring applause was heard in the air. The aggressive selling move encouraged the mercenaries to bring meat. Rumors about Logan spread like the wind in nearby settlements. Logan laughed, realizing that Philip had perfectly coped with the task assigned to him. Ricky, on the contrary, was never cheerful and did not understand how Logan could even laugh at such a moment. Rick tells him to look at the people he just brought and think how much gossip they've heard to stand there with faces like that. Logan replies that there is no need to worry about it and that it will all be over soon. Rick argues that one should not be so calm and that all this will not end so easily. The rumors that spread not only in the castle, but also in several localities were of course a significant problem. But most of all, Rick was afraid that Logan's father was furious. The meeting with his father was inevitable. As soon as Logan enters his office, his father asks Logan if he enjoyed running away from home. Logan proudly replies that it has indeed been a rewarding journey. Patrick had already heard rumors about his son's crazy activities, especially those related to monster meat, but he was glad that his son spent this time usefully. Rumors are just rumors. Logan wasn't the least bit ashamed of what he'd done. Logan's stepmother couldn't believe how confidently and without remorse he was saying things like that. She decided to push Patrick to teach him, as a father, a lesson to his son, who doesn't even know where he belongs. Moreover, she did not understand how Logan's actions could best affect the honor of their house. Logan says that such concern is unnecessary. He spent almost nothing from the funds received for breaking the engagement. Logan's stepmother, who had always been prejudiced against him, looked menacingly and told him to repeat what he had just said. Such impudence was unacceptable to her, and she tried in every possible way to convince Patrick to punish his son. Patrick himself was forced to listen to this entire stream of rather not the most pleasant words. In the end, he got tired of it, and he menacingly says that enough is enough. Patrick's scream alone was enough for the room to immediately fall into deathly silence. Neither Logan nor his stepmother dared to say even a word. He says that he wants to talk to Logan alone, which greatly surprises Marjan, who was counting on Patrick to take her side. As if piercing Logan with his gaze, Patrick says that he will give him a final warning. Logan carried himself confidently, not showing any doubt for a moment, because he was confident in his decisions. They were left alone. And Patrick, for whom his son's behavior was a real mystery, is trying to find out only one thing: what is happening and why everything is this way. Logan tells his father that he won't understand him even if he tells him everything in detail. Even if so, does Logan at least understand how others speak of him? They consider him cruel, evil, and obsessed with money, and lately even insane. Rumors about Logan's strange adventures did not take long to arise, and very quickly reached the McLean house. How much longer will Patrick have to cover for his son? This cannot continue forever, and if this is just a period that will end in the future, then let him know about it. Let Logan at least talk about it so Patrick can at least apologize to his late mother. After Patrick mentioned Logan's mother, sadness appeared on his face, and his gaze, as if looking into nowhere, froze in place. He couldn't believe his father mentioned her. This had never happened in his previous life, even when he was kicked out of the house. Perhaps Patrick has not yet lost hope for his son, but the environment is not calm, and if Patrick has not lost confidence now, he may lose it soon. Logan understands that he needs to show his father significant results. He asks to give him 1 year. Logan promises that after this time, his father will understand why he is doing this now. He asks his father to do a favor and give him the opportunity to prove himself for 1 year. Patrick looked at his son with surprised eyes, as if he saw a completely different person, a person ready to take responsibility for his words. Logan soon left his father's office. Patrick was left alone with himself and his thoughts. Favor. How strange this word sounds in a conversation between a parent and a child. Patrick holds the pendant in his hands and thinks to himself that if Logan doesn't answer for his words in a year, he will have to make a decision. He is the head of the house first, and only then, Logan's father. He opens the pendant and, looking at the image of a beautiful young woman with blue hair, asks her for forgiveness. Patrick still had no idea what Logan was up to. He promised to protect him at all costs so that he would grow up to be a good person. Clouds of anxiety and misunderstanding seem to be gathering over Patrick, and he says that it looks like he should have been more careful. After meeting with his father, Logan heads to the castle courtyard and meets his brother there. A huge surprise for him was that Ranyan awakened the Force. But Ranyan is only 14, and this result can be called not only good, but damn excellent. Logan was especially happy about this because in his previous life, his brother's strength did not awaken until the War of the Regions. But now it happened faster. Ranyan claims that he was able to awaken the Force thanks to his brother. Logan looks at him with a confused look, and Ranyan explains that the Knights tried to prevent him from meeting Logan when he returned. After his brother mentioned the Knights, Logan, with a slightly surprised expression on his face, turns his gaze to them. He notices something. In some places, the faces were red, as if they had been hit hard several times, and the armor was dirty, as if someone had dragged the Knights along the ground. Logan realizes that his brother awakened the Force by trying to meet him, and when this happened, he managed to break through 2 Knights. Logan laughs contentedly and praises his brother for the amazing result. If he can teach him the secrets of the divine sword, then when the power stabilizes, Ranyan will become significantly stronger than in his previous life. After meeting his brother, the story continues near a house in the south of the barony. Dwayne was already expecting the arrival of the main character, and soon he waited, seeing Logan in the company of Casalon. Dwayne complied with Logan's request and hired 350 C-rank mercenaries. The mercenaries were immediately discussing Logan, and they were suspicious of him, for the Baron's family would never have gotten involved with a mercenary guild unless they were crazy. Thanks to his enhanced hearing, Logan heard every word, which didn't make him feel good. He understands that he must immediately pacify these scum who are fighting for their lives, otherwise they will be impossible to control. Logan looks at the man sitting in the back rows of the mercenaries and turns to him. The man gets up and asks if Logan turned to him. "Do you think I look funny in armor and with a sword?" Logan asks the man. To which he immediately replies that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Logan says. At that very moment, the question arises in his head. How did Logan hear him from there? Logan says that of course the man doesn't think so, otherwise he would have to answer for his words. Moreover, a C-rank mercenary does not have abilities that could allow him to look down on others. The man's surprised look lets the protagonist know that such words offended him. It seems that even a lowly man has pride. He orders the man to come forward, and if he can hit him even once, Logan promises to immediately pay him a year's wages and let him go. In turn, Logan stakes his honor as an aristocrat, and the others will be witnesses to his promise. The man agrees, but just in case, asks if Logan will retract his words. He approaches Logan, and we have the opportunity to look at him in more detail. Looking at the huge height and size of the man, some mercenaries believe that he may have a B rank, others doubt it, but are sure that he will receive this rank when he defeats Logan. It becomes clear to Logan himself why this man is so confident. He's huge and muscular, the perfect image to boost his ego. Feeling absolutely confident, the man says Logan can start the fight. Logan sarcastically replies that the man will regret it, to which he counters that he has been using the sword much longer than Logan, so he shouldn't be so self-confident. He even jokingly asks if he could give Logan an extra edge. Well, to at least even the odds, Logan is just a boy who doesn't know how to fight. However, Logan is not going to joke, and taking advantage of the thug's self-confidence, he hits him in the face. The mercenaries immediately open their mouths in surprise. Dwayne and Casalon were as surprised as the others. One precise blow was enough to knock out several teeth. This blow was enough for the man to fall and be unable to get up from the ground. Indescribable surprise was visible on the face of each mercenary. They thought that Logan was just another upstart from an aristocratic family, who was nothing of himself, and would lose in the very first seconds against the thug, but everything turned out the other way around. Unlike his rivals, Logan always remained calm and did not give in to overconfidence. As in the fight with the Dominion, so in this one, he made excellent use of the excessive ego of his enemies, thanks to which he quickly defeated them. Logan slowly inhaled and then exhaled. One mercenary has already paid for his words. Maybe someone else wants to say something about Logan. The shocked mercenaries cannot believe that Logan is using force at his age. Even Castellan was surprised by this. He thought Logan was unusual, but he had no idea he was that good. Having heard only a quiet whisper from the mercenaries, Logan understands that there are no more people willing to say anything unnecessary. Having settled the confusion, he formally introduces himself. He, Logan McLean, the one who called them here. Many were probably curious as to why Logan would spend money on mercenaries. Well, he had an answer to a similar question. He plans to make them cavalry crossbowmen. Dwayne and Castellan looked at Logan in surprise. What they had heard seemed like the ramblings of some madman. The mercenaries also didn't quite understand why this was done. Because, does anyone use a crossbow on a horse? Recharging will take a lot of time, and this option cannot be called practical. Castellan approaches the main character and quietly whispers that a crossbow is not the most suitable weapon for cavalry. That's right, Logan knows about it. Then Castellan has a logical question. Why does he need this? A crossbow is more powerful than a bow, but inexperienced shooters take more than a minute to reload. On a horse, a person will very quickly lose the ability to shoot, even if he has 3 to 4 loaded crossbows with him. Logan tells Castellan that for now, he should think that he is throwing money away by pretending to be a soldier. All Logan demanded was that the mercenaries be thoroughly trained. Castellan would realize what it was for later. He couldn't say it yet, but the crossbow cavalrymen would be a powerful force for the McLeans, even after the War of Regions. Castellan is ambivalent about the idea. On the one hand, he sees Logan as a person who manages his money wisely, but on the other hand, his ideas seem very strange. In any case, it was Logan who hired Castellan, and not he him, and unnecessary questions are unlikely to help advance the matter. All that remains for Castellan is to carry out Logan's order and train the mercenaries. The story continues a few days later. Logan sits in his office and reflects on the recently passed qualification test for mercenaries, which out of 350, passed only 312. The result is quite good, considering that a little more than 10% of participants failed the test. Logan is distracted from his thoughts by Hamar's voice. The dwarf looks at the drawing he received from Logan, and with a confused expression on his face, asks, "What is this?" Logan replies that this is a diagram of the crossbow that he has to make. Logan understands the dwarf's surprised reaction. The drawing looks a little rough for a professional. However, Logan took the image of a crossbow not from fantasy, but from memories of a past life. He used this weapon for several decades and roughly outlined its structure from memory. Hamar, after all, is a dwarf with the rank of expert, so he should be able to cope. Hamar asks if he understands correctly that he needs to place the container that will hold the projectiles in the back of the crossbow and make it self-reloading, and somehow design it so that the crossbow fires 3 times in a row. And who would come up with such nonsense? Logan, of course. There was an awkward pause. The dwarf felt uncomfortable for having spoken so rudely about his master's idea. To smooth things over, he says that in principle the idea is very innovative, but it's not that simple. The intertwined cables in such a mechanism will not hold up and will break, and because of the wooden box at the back, it will be inconvenient for the arrows. And what to do with such problems? But how does Logan know? Hamar is a dwarf here with the rank of experts, so let him decide. This answer angered the dwarf. Veins appeared on his forehead. Logan says he was just joking, and asks him not to be angry. He suggests that Hamar reduce the size of the projectiles and where they are located. And yes, after all, a crossbow is unlikely to be able to shoot 3 times in a row, so 1 shot will be enough. Logan also says that Hamar can make the container detachable to reload with each shot. For convenience, you can call it a store. Hamar can't believe his ears. Logan just offered him so many brilliant ideas, as if he himself were a craftsman with extensive experience. Enthusiasm was clearly visible in his gaze. Logan's idea was incredible. This will be a weapon of a new time. That's right, because in the future, just such a crossbow will be invented. And to create a weapon, all you need is a container, a spring, some wood, glue, and a string. The task is not easy, but very intriguing. Hamar prepares to take on the job with enthusiasm. Logan asks approximately, how long will it take to create a crossbow? Hamar does not give a clear answer, because Logan asks him about the timing of the creation of a weapon that he has never heard of before. Logan replies that these weapons were invented by people, which the dwarf is very surprised by. In general, it doesn't matter. If the gnome thinks that he can't handle it, then let him give up. Hamar does not intend to give up the test so easily, and promises to create something much better in a month. That's when Logan learns what it's like to deal with a dwarf whose ego won't allow him to give up so easily without even trying. Logan likes his new employee's determination and has high hopes for him. The story then continues somewhere in the castle courtyard. Victor runs as fast as he can. We can hear the slow and gradual increase in the pace of his breathing. Victor slows down for just a moment, but Logan isn't happy with that and reminds him that Victor can do better. Almost with the last of his strength, he continues to run. He was the only one running, Logan and Victor's sister watching him. Since the two arrived at the castle, Logan had only fed them and let them sleep. It's amazing how food, and at least some sleep, can change a person beyond recognition, who just recently was supposedly a few steps away from death. Victor's legs were already carrying Victor, a little more, and he was about to fall. Logan notices this and orders him to rest. Victor happily stops and sits down to rest. The sister immediately runs to check on her brother to make sure he hasn't harmed himself. Just as he was ready to protect her, she was ready to provide care. The result for Logan is more than impressive. A 14-year-old boy, smaller than his peers, ran 20 kilometers without a break. But most of all, Logan admired Victor's perseverance and endurance. He shouldn't have worried about this guy. Looking at Victor, Logan realizes that he was not a killer from birth, which means something forced him to become one. And then the main character's attention is attracted by Victor's sister. In Logan's past life, everyone knew about Victor, but there was no mention of his sister. Not the most pleasant, but rather even terrible guesses about what could have happened crept into his head. Anyway, now the fate of these two has taken a completely different path. Anyway, Logan already gave Victor enough of a break. It was time to move on to the next training session. Logan gives Victor a wooden sword and says that he will study the sword technique of the Kingdom of Grandia, which every student of the night owns. To make the training even better, Logan, instead of just telling him to do it this way, decides to demonstrate the technique by example. He tightens his grip on the wooden hilt of his sword. He then raises the sword above his head. Then he delivers an accurate blow along a vertical trajectory downwards. Victor looks at the main character with a tired look. All he wants is to pass out and fall asleep so that Logan will stop bothering him. But if this is the price of good food and sleep, he has no choice. The determined fire in his eyes makes it clear that he will do anything. Overcome his pain, surpass his limits, anything in order to become stronger and protect his sister. He tightens his grip on the hilt of his sword and raises it above his head. Then he repeats everything that the main character did. Logan is surprised at how accurately Victor repeated the blow. He not only perfectly repeated the movements, but even the breaths. But he showed the technique for the first time. It's unlikely that Ronian was that good at his age. Logan is pleased with Victor's desire to reach new heights. He says that if Victor can develop stamina and perfectly execute the kingdom technique more than 1,000 times in a row, who can safely be called a knight? Victor's gaze is full not only of determination, but also of hope, which he lost when he found himself in slavery. Logan asks if he can handle the task. Victor decisively replies that, yes, he will make every effort to achieve his goal. Very good. If he suddenly needs something for training, Logan advises him to contact Rick, who can get anything. Victor says that he doesn't need anything. Is he really sure? Maybe he still needs something, maybe wooden dummies so he can practice hitting the enemy, or something else. No, Victor doesn't need any of this. All he asks is to continue to look after his sister. That's enough. In exchange, he is ready to carry out the orders of his mentor in order to become a knight, as Logan wants. Logan understands that he made the right choice. He was not mistaken in taking Victor and his sister with him. Victor is unlikely to be able to go to war, most likely due to his young age, but in the future, he will become a huge support for the McLeans. An army of mercenaries and new weapons will become a formidable force. But you shouldn't rely too much on them. A gnome may not have a good crossbow, and even if he manages, there is a chance that the mercenaries will not take possession of him. Essentially, Logan trusted, and put everything in the hands of others. Even though the protagonist trusted each of them, there's always a chance that something could go wrong, and so he needs to come up with a backup plan. And the one who will help Logan with this is undoubtedly his father. Logan comes to his father and says that he wants to join the knight's training. Patrick listens to him carefully and asks if he really wants this. Logan confidently replies that he is ready to join the knight's training. After this, the story continues outside the castle somewhere in the forest, among tall trees covered with thick foliage. We are introduced to a new character, a captain of the McLean Knightly Order named Henkel. Logan kept his word, and starting today he joins the training of the Knightly Order. The knights took this news ambiguously. Did they hear right? The first young master is going to train with them? Logan defeated the Dominion, and now the knights seem like some kind of joke to him? Well, isn't it nonsense? Heinkel understands the indignation of the knights, and to be honest, he himself is not happy with this news either. After Logan expressed his desire to his father to join the knights' training, Patrick soon conveyed this information to Heinkel. He asks Patrick if he is really going to send the young master to train with the knights. They definitely won't be happy about this. Patrick replies that he is not asking for special treatment for Logan, just because he is a member of his family. On the contrary, Patrick wants his son to be warmed up as a recruit so that he can learn what it is like to be a real knight. Heinkel clutches his head, not knowing what to do next. Even though Patrick himself wanted Logan to be trained to the fullest, he is his master's son. It would be easier to treat him well. Logan notices Heinkel's confusion and says not to worry. If during this week he does not catch up with the others in terms of academic performance, then he will pretend that nothing happened and leave the captain of the Knightly Order alone. Shocked, Heinkel looks at the main character and does not believe what he heard. It was as if a completely different person appeared before him. Heinkel still saw in Logan a guy who wouldn't lift a finger to become stronger. Until that moment. Well, if that's what he wanted, so be it. Heinkel smiles maliciously. The difficulty of the training this week will increase threefold, and now he has the opportunity to test the strength of not only the knights, but also the young master who decided to join them. The training began immediately. Everything, as Heinkel promised. The knights worked hard, walking forward, gritting their teeth. Heinkel approached the training creatively. He ordered the knights to jump on the back of a comrade, and those who were not lucky enough to carry the knights should go forward at all costs. He decided to do such training not only to strengthen the body and morale of the knights, but also to make them understand how hard it is for the horses when the knights sit on them in full uniform. So let them feel firsthand what it's like to carry a person completely dressed in armor. That's why some knights were surprised when the captain said that they would train in armor. He didn't lie about the difficulty, and all because of the troublemaker who decided to show off to the others. They believe that Logan will not last even 3 days with such training. No, even 1 day will probably be too much for him. Well, when they turn their attention to Logan, they are seriously surprised. He not only did not lag behind them, but kept pace. Suddenly, Logan takes off and runs away, shocking everyone. While the others could barely bear the weight on their backs, Logan broke away from them with such speed that it was as if this was nothing more than a warm-up for him. Heinkel is as shocked as the others. Logan not only kept up with the rest of the group, but also left everyone behind. Not only that, he also manages to smile, while the others hold on with all their might, gritting their teeth. At this rate, not he, but the knights will fall behind the program. Although he organized such training to strengthen the bodies and spirits of the knights, he also understands that each person has his own limit, and most of the knights could barely walk. Realizing this, he orders everyone to stop. In order for the knights to catch their breath a little, he gives them 10 minutes of rest. Hearing the order to stop, all the knights immediately fell to the ground, finally feeling relief, and only Logan managed to stay on his feet. Well, it looks like the young master is doing well in his training, but maybe he's tired? Maybe he should rest a little more? At the same time, Heinkel hopes that Logan will give a positive answer, and he will be able to cancel this crazy training. Logan calmly replies that the training is certainly not the easiest, but it's tolerable. As they say, you can live. Moreover, knights go through this every day, so they are probably strong. Logan looks forward to his next training session, and the rest of the knights look at him like he's crazy. That's not what Heinkel wanted to do. Because Patrick was his father, he had hoped to take him out of the training program by giving him an extreme test at the beginning. As a result, the knights could barely manage it. And for Logan, the training was like an easy jog. From his calm expression, you can understand that he is not even close to tired, and is probably ready to run in the same way for at least several hours. The story continues deep into the night. Logan is left alone, surrounded by the night forest. Not a single knight is nearby, every single one is gone. Training with them is his insurance in case all his plans fail. If things go wrong, he will join the knights and fight on the front lines, so he needs to get close to them now and make connections. But to implement the backup plan, he needs not only to strengthen his muscles. Unlike most, he knows how to use strength, which can be developed through meditation. But it is equally important to train the body. This is why the training of the Order of Knights will be useful to him. With these thoughts, he uses force and places his hand on his chest. He smiles and thinks it worked, just like he planned. As long as the core of strength grows, he does not even feel tired. It was time to practice using the sword. Logan takes a deep breath and closes his eyes, trying to become one with the power, to trust it, to feel it flow through his body. Gathering his thoughts and concentrating with one precise blow of his sword, he cuts the air along an ideal trajectory. Is this the power of a one-star core? Maybe when he reaches the second star, he will gain the strength to match a high-ranking knight like his father. The training is not in vain. He gradually becomes stronger, and all for the sake of protecting his family. Soon the story continues at the McLean house. The first crossbow turns out to be a failure. The second one also fails, and the third, like the previous two, turns out to be a failure. Didn't the gnome come up with anything else? Where is the carving that Logan asked for? This thing only fires one shot. Where exactly is the magazine? Hamar's face turns red from the protagonist's statements. He does not like the way he speaks about his inventions. Logan grabs his head and says out loud that he shouldn't have said that. That's right, Logan may be his master, but the pride of an artisan cannot be undermined by such statements. Logan seems to be stabbing the dwarf in the back, saying that if he is not capable of the best, then nothing can be done about it. Several weeks of work in vain, Logan blames himself for expecting too much from the gnome. It was entirely his fault for trusting him so much. He probably overestimated his abilities and was mistaken. So much money wasted. Hamar, however, does not intend to give up. He promises to return in a month with a new weapon. The first three were failures? Never mind, Hamar's ego won't let him give up so easily. He's a damn dwarf with the rank of expert. Isn't he capable of creating some kind of damn crossbow? The dwarf heads for the exit, and Logan realizes that Hamar is so angry that he is ready to start over, even after 3 unsuccessful attempts. Suddenly a thought occurs to Logan. What if he pisses Hamar off even more? Then maybe he will build something even more innovative. The ego of a dwarf, especially one like Hamar, will never be allowed to stop, even after a series of failures. The story continues a month later. As the dwarf promised, he returned with a new weapon. The crossbow he created could fire 2 arrows at the same time. Hamar pulls the trigger, arrows fly out, and each one hits the target. Not only did they hit the target, but each of them practically hit the center. That is, there was no huge spread, and both arrows hit almost the same point. Well, what will Logan say this time? The crossbow fires one more shot and is easier to hold with one hand, and you can also change the magazine by loading new arrows. Logan is not only surprised, he is shocked by the result. The crossbow can be reloaded in less than 5 seconds, something that even experienced crossbowmen with a single-shot crossbow cannot do. Of course, the radius is not as large as that of weapons from the past, and it is smaller, but it is better suited for a cavalryman. Hamar has created something truly amazing. Logan can't believe they've gotten this far, even though there's still plenty of time before the war starts. Hamar distracts Logan from his musings by asking if he's even listening to him. He actually worked in sweat for a month to create such a masterpiece. Out of indescribable joy, Logan grabs the gnome and lifts him up. Hamar did not just a great job, but an incredible job. Logan begins to praise the dwarves, and especially Hamar, who experiences a slight feeling of awkwardness because strangers can see them, especially since he is not a child for the main character to hold him in his arms. Logan looks at Hamar with joyful eyes. Hamar, seeing how sincerely Logan rejoices at his success, asks what he wants. Logan smiles wryly and asks the gnome if he can make 400 of these crossbows in a month. Soon the time comes to test the crossbow in front of the mercenaries. The crossbow fires and hits the target accurately. Kaisalon acted as the shooter. The main character stood nearby, and a crowd of hunters stood behind. They are amazed at how far the arrows fly. they are no less surprised that the crossbow fires several times in a row. Even K-Solon experiences incredible shock. He, as a rank A mercenary, who has seen a lot in his life, cannot believe that a crossbow is capable of doing such a thing. He examines it and realizes that the crossbow is muzzle loading and shoots at a long distance with enormous power and speed. If you equip an army of more than 300 cavalrymen with such crossbows, it's scary to think about the consequences. These will be real killing machines, sweeping away all living things in their path. Finally, K-Solon understands what Logan meant when he spoke about cavalry crossbowmen. Well, yes, something like that. Hamar, however, had a hard time. Other masters helped him, but it was impossible to predict that he would carry out Logan's order 2 weeks ahead of schedule and even make an additional 100 crossbows. A dwarf with the rank of expert fully justified his title. Having seen what a crossbow can do, the idea of sharing the weapon with the knightly order and soldiers arises in Logan's head. But he has a financial problem, and technology leakage can never be ruled out, so he decides not to spread the information for now. Logan orders the mercenaries to take crossbows and go clear the mountains. Surprised, K-Solon looks at the main character, in complete bewilderment. What? Does the proud mercenary really want to say that this is impossible? K-Solon's face. One might indeed think that the task entrusted to him by Logan truly seems impossible. Maybe it will work out after all. No, it is impossible. Logan responds as follows. If K-Solon believes that this is impossible, then let him make it happen. Otherwise, everything would be in vain. However, K-Solon was not worried about monsters. Logan wouldn't develop such a weapon to kill monsters. A small number of troops with basic weapons would be enough to get rid of the monsters. But Logan has developed something much more than just a crossbow, and a thought occurs to K-Solon. Is he really preparing for war? After a public demonstration of the crossbow's abilities, Logan returns to his nightly training. This time, he makes it harder on himself, and carries 2 knights on his back. The others are amazed at how strong the young master's stamina is. One of the knights says that this is just funny. It's probably due to natural genes. The other knight replies that if Logan took after his father, he should be good with a sword, and yet, one knight clearly remembers Logan's fight with the Dominion, which he reminds the others about, to which another responds to him that you shouldn't compare the knight with the guy who lost to his younger brother when he hadn't even awakened yet. But, despite everything, there is one indisputable fact. Logan has been withstanding all the training for a month now. The training, which was originally designed to oust Logan, has now taken hold within the order. They suddenly became an incentive for low-ranking knights who usually did everything carelessly. Thanks to such grueling training, the knights realized how difficult it was for the horses and began to empathize with them. One of the knights asks his comrade if it's hard for him. After all, he ate very well yesterday and probably now weighs more than any other knight. The comrade replies that this is absolutely not important. He is one of the knights, so there is no need to worry about this. As a result, the training helped not only strengthen strength and will, but also the bonds between the knights. Heinkel continued to train them like this because the first young master did not leave. But the result surprised him. Logan feels in the back of his head how Heinkel is looking at him with an admiring gaze. Finally, he saw in the main character a real man and a worthy heir to the McLean family. You could say that Logan became his lucky talisman from the moment he decided to join the Knights. The story continues deep into the night. Logan sits cross-legged on a bed in an empty room. Having exhausted his body with training, he decides to begin stimulating inner awareness through meditation. Repetition and coordination of this bears fruit. In addition, Logan has recently noticed signs of a change in the power, and if he can improve it as he plans, then the superhuman called the Aura Master and the Archmage will no longer be a threat to him, as in his previous life. He tries to immerse himself in absolute calm by fully concentrating on meditation. After a few seconds, a bright glowing ball appears near his chest. He begins to pronounce words out loud in an unknown language. The glow of the ball intensifies, and his body is covered with an aura. The glow becomes brighter. The magical energy of the aura is felt in every place of the room. Everything is finally ready. Logan managed to create a 2-star core. Now he has the base to learn the next secret sword technique. This technique is called the Killer Iron Cut. Given the power gained from the first technique, Logan has no doubt that the second will exceed his expectations regarding its power. If only he'd been able to learn the technique before the war. Then, Even high-ranking knights would not be afraid of him. The story continues the next day, somewhere in the middle of a spacious green meadow. The monsters, as if nothing had happened, walk here and there, and everything looks as if their serene and calm life will continue. But this feeling disappears for the monsters at the same moment when they hear horses. They turn around and don't understand what the hell is going on. Seeing a detachment of several dozen cavalrymen, the monsters take flight. However, Castellan does not intend to let them go so easily. He raises his fist, preparing to give the command to the mercenaries. The monsters scatter in different directions, hoping to escape from the advancing cavalry. The cavalry takes up positions and prepares crossbows for battle. Castellan waits for the right moment and gives the command to shoot at the monsters. In an instant, dozens of arrows flew at the backs of the monsters. They run as fast as they can. We can hear their frantic screams from the feeling of hellish pain. Those monsters that were farthest from the cavalry hope to save their miserable lives. But the arrows overtake them too. Not a single monster escaped the attack. Castellan looked at this carnage with a cold and emotionless gaze. For other mercenaries, this battle was like some kind of game. Many took pleasure in destroying monsters. The crossbow has almost no recoil, and a shot from one of the mercenaries pierced the monster's head right through and hit the head of another who was standing behind. All this time, Logan stood behind the mercenaries, quietly and calmly watching them. In less than 10 seconds, a pack of more than 100 monsters was destroyed. The mercenaries' old habits of using a regular crossbow are making themselves felt a little, but they have already begun to reload faster. Logan understands that it was not in vain that they went so far to hunt. Well, is he happy with the result? It seems that even though they performed terribly during the first hunt, they have now become better. Castellan still could not get rid of the thought that came to him during the first test of the crossbow. To find out at least a little detail, he firstly apologizes for his curiosity, but asks Logan, why does he need all this? As someone who had seen a lot of things, he had never heard of a mercenary army with such power. Is Logan going to kill all the monsters on the continent? The protagonist is about to answer Castellan's question, but he is interrupted by a nearby scream. A man on a horse runs up to him, and Logan turns around, asking what's wrong. Castellan is also interested in what is happening, seeing how much this man is in a hurry. The guy says that a man named Rick sent him. Rick. Why would he send someone so far away? Did something serious happen? The guy was in such a hurry that he could barely speak, but he finds the strength to say that yesterday, Viscount Tesron declared war on them. The stunned main character looks at the guy and cannot utter a word. There was nothing but fear in his gaze, and a chilling cold ran through his body. Soon we will find out why the main character was so surprised. But for now, we return to the moment when the Viscount declared war on the House of MacLean. He accuses the MacLeans of insulting his ancestor by wrongfully taking his life. A shocked Patrick looks at the magic ball, through which he sees the Viscount's conversion, and can't believe it. An emergency meeting begins. One of those present doesn't understand why Tesron is only talking about it now if it happened in the distant past. Does he want to get even now? The other says that the war is really coming. Heinkel asks Patrick what should they do. The number of the Viscount's knightly order alone exceeds their army. Someone says that it is necessary to request support and send knights to guard the city, to which another replies that in this case, the city will plunge into chaos if the knights with power fail to cope. Another argues that an envoy must first be sent to try to negotiate a truce with Tesron. The atmosphere at the meeting cannot be called calm. Everyone offers their own options for solving the problem, and everyone believes that his option is the best. Patrick is forced to listen to all this, but soon he runs out of patience. Silence, Patrick says menacingly and loudly. Even though the power of his family is not as great as before, these people constantly declare war for no particular reason. Obviously, this was planned on purpose. Did the idiots proposing peace even think before saying such nonsense? How can we discuss such things when we're talking about Tesron? This is simply impossible. There is only one option left, preparing for war. Patrick demands that those gathered make a plan on how they can win the impending war. Objections will not be accepted. People understand that Patrick is determined and is not going to enter into dialogue with the enemy so easily. Marion looks at her husband, realizing what a heavy burden he will soon have to carry on his shoulders. One of the people in black suits asks Patrick if the young master will participate in the war. Marjan turns around and looks at the guy who asked the question with a shocked look. She understands perfectly well that if there is a chance that Logan will go to war, then her own son may not be an exception. She looks at Patrick, waiting for him to make a decision. Patrick decides not to give his sons any privileges. They will both go to war along with the others. Ronyan has awakened the force, and Logan is old enough to contribute to the coming battle. By the way, about Logan, many of those gathered are already aware that he is training with the Knights. Since they both can use force, they will provide great support to the army. Rick realizes with horror that Logan is not at all aware of what is happening now. He runs out into the hallway and runs to the exit to give Logan a message. That's exactly what happened. The guy tells the main character everything down to the smallest detail, from Tesseron's appeal to Rick's transmission of the message. Logan managed to calm down and managed to calmly listen to the guy. However, the shock still did not let him go, because according to his memories from a past life, the war was supposed to start only in 2 months. The guy asks Logan to hurry, because the Viscount's troops will not hesitate, and will ignore all customs and go straight to fight. We need to leave now to at least make it to the middle of the battle. Every second counts. There is no time to think. Kaisalan approaches Logan and says that he and the mercenary squad are always ready to take action and help Logan. The main character looks at the mercenaries in surprise because they heard perfectly well what was being said. This is no longer a war with monsters, but with people who are often more insidious and sophisticated than wild creatures. But Kaisalan looks like he took this news easily, which surprises the main character. Kaisalan replies that they are now in such a state that they themselves are ready to start a war. They have excellent weapons in their hands, and it is obvious that they want to use them. The naked eye can see how confident the mercenaries are, and they are not even close to being afraid of fighting people. But this is not stupid self-confidence. They managed to see the power of the crossbows, leaving the pack of monsters that had increased since last winter without even the slightest chance of survival. Logan and the mercenaries have only one way out, to win at any cost. Now their forces should be just enough to engage in battle with Tesseron's army. McLean House was in a fever from the news of an unexpected war, but 314 people were confident of their victory. Logan was taken by surprise that this war happened earlier than he had planned. The day after the declaration of war, Tesseron's troops showed up in McLean territory. Their numbers exceeded the vassals' expectations. The knight immediately reported to Patrick the number of enemy troops, which amounted to about 100 single knights, 1,000 regular soldiers, and 10,000 cavalry. Patrick looks at the knight and realizes that this is a full-scale war. They will have to face not only the forces of knights, who are like superhumans for ordinary people, but also the cavalry. And this is in a war between regions, not nations. Patrick doesn't understand only one thing. Why? Why go so far? Tesseron could have sent a small army to avoid huge bloodshed. Such an act could only mean one thing. This man was so mad that he was ready to shed a sea of blood. The sudden declaration of war becomes an unpleasant event for the McLeans. However, the surprises do not end there. The Kurosov house reports that it is not going to send help. No, this can't be. Marjan does not believe this and decides that the knight must have made a mistake. But no, this is not a mistake. Mr. Duane approached them several times, and each time he was refused. The situation is very sad. The enemy outnumbers them, and the other house refuses to help. Patrick orders the gathering of all men capable of holding weapons. They will respond to the vile enemy with all their might. The confidant, the house of Kiros, turned against them. Trapped, McLean gathered as many men as he could to fight Tesseron. There are 53 knights among the army, 552 soldiers in the regular army, and also 4418 conscripts. The total number of troops was 5023 people. One of the regular soldiers looks at the enemy army and is horrified. A huge line of the vanguard lined up in front of them, behind which there were countless troops, ready to go into battle at any moment, not sparing anyone on their way. And this is not even half the number of Tesseron's people. Patrick finds himself in a difficult situation. There is no one to expect help from. The closest allies, on whom they were counting, seem to have stuck a knife in their back, turning away at the most difficult moment. The soldiers are interested in where the first young gentleman is. The second one replies that he left a long time ago, and has not returned yet. Looks like Logan shouldn't be expected. He ran away like a coward when he heard the news about the war. Ronyan tries to defend his brother, shutting up the knights. He does not believe that such a person would act so vilely. He remembers Logan practicing with the sword on the castle grounds. With a smile on his face, Logan told his brother that he would teach him a secret technique. Only now does Ronian realize that Logan knew there would be a war. He simply refuses to believe that a person who wanted to protect his family would abandon her at such a moment. Ronian does not doubt his brother for a second, and hopes that he will soon come to their aid. Ronian's words do not convince the soldiers otherwise. They still continue to believe the rumors and decide that the Lord's son has escaped. Ronian looks at the soldiers with sad eyes, and Patrick says that he will have to replace his brother. The situation is really not simple. Logan is unknown where, there is no one to expect help from, but despite this, Patrick orders his son to remain determined no matter what happens. Of course, he himself cannot believe that his eldest son just ran away like that. However, something else is important now. They must win the war. Patrick raises a huge sword and orders the army, preparing to attack. Their goal is to defeat the non-entities, who dare to call themselves warriors. Patrick's unwavering spirit inspires the others, and they resolutely march on the enemy. Even seeing how huge his army is, Tesseron smiles evilly and thinks to himself that Patrick has finally taken up the sword. His knights are his swords, and if Patrick wants to get to him, then he must face them first. Tesseron's words do not frighten Patrick. On the contrary, they awaken even greater rage in him. He decides to use the force and covers his body and the horse's body with a magical aura. An avant-garde stands in Patrick's way, and he has no choice but to fight his way through them. He prepares to strike. Tesseron's soldier blocks Patrick's attack in an instant, without even moving. To his horror, Patrick realizes that the enemy's shield has not even cracked, and the Tesseron knight only smiles with an animal grin, as if Patrick's huge sword is nothing more to him than a pathetic toy. Like most men, Rick was sent to the battlefield. However, he was not as confident in himself as many knights. He was afraid, and very much. Among the servants, he was not the only one who was taken into the army. He sees how one of his comrades cannot move his arm, and another has just been destroyed by an enemy knight. He looks the other way. He sees his colleague screaming in despair and asking for help. But Rick can no longer help the guy. He hears dying screams, and soon his colleague dies. Horror comes over him. He realizes that they are losing. Their troops were so outnumbered that even servants like him were sent to fight. If they surround them, it will definitely be the end. Rick was so distracted by numerous thoughts that he did not even notice how the enemy knight approached him. Luckily, Rick was hit with the wooden part of the spear. However, he did not rejoice for long when he saw the tip of a spear being raised over his body. But suddenly the knight misses. He is surprised to discover that the tip of a spear is sticking out of his chest. McLean's soldier arrived in time to help Rick. He orders Rick to quickly grab his spear and fight. From indescribable horror, Rick does not immediately understand that the person who saved him is an ally. He extends his hand and thanks the soldier for saving him. There is hope in his eyes that he will at least be able to survive, but this hope is destroyed the moment he sees the red blood. An arrow flies at the knight. He falls to the ground, managing to make only a few sounds before dying. Rick gets up and runs. While the rest of the knights of the McLean order bravely run towards the enemy, Rick, with indescribable horror in his eyes, runs to the rear, as far as possible from this hell. He slows down slightly for a moment and turns his head. A terrifying picture opens before his eyes. The once clean and green clearing is strewn with bodies, and the blood of soldiers killed in battle is scattered everywhere. Rick felt like he was in real hell. There was pain, despair, and suffering everywhere. He raises his head, and a new wave of fear washes over him. Less than 20 meters away, a heavily armed enemy cavalry has already appeared, and they will stop at nothing to destroy everyone who serves the McLeans. Will he, like the others, die here, never having time to live his life to old age? We return to Patrick, who continues to fight the enemy knight. Despite the first failed attempt, Patrick does not give up and repeatedly tries to break through the defense, but his attempts are in vain. The knight is so firmly on his feet that Patrick, putting all his strength into the blow, barely moved him from his position. The knight praises Patrick's skill. He still lived up to his title. They prepared so hard that they expected to easily crush everyone into powder, and that's pretty much what happened, with the exception of Patrick. Patrick realizes that he is up against a clearly difficult knight. He managed to survive his blows containing power, and there was not even a scratch left on him, which means that this is someone equal in strength to Patrick himself. Only a high-ranking knight could do this, and Patrick had no idea that Tesseron had one. The other four, standing slightly further away, were of at least average rank. Maybe that's why they are so confident in themselves, because they know that there is a knight on their team who can fight on equal terms with Patrick. Patrick asks if they are the freaks who were preparing to deal with him. Yes, that's right. They prepared long and carefully to carry out their plan. For now, only a high-ranking knight is fighting Patrick. But if those four surround him, it will become much more difficult. Patrick understands that if he doesn't make it further, then the knightly order won't be able to either. Also realizing that a huge sword will not make the situation better, Patrick throws it. He decides to take up the sword, which he kept in case he had to engage in close combat. He will never allow anyone to stop him. The steel swords clashed in a fierce battle. The high-ranking knight jumps back. Suddenly his gaze fills with horror. Patrick is quickly approaching on horseback, and in his eyes only anger is visible, all-consuming and frantic. However, Patrick quickly notices that one of the four middle-ranking knights who previously stood in the country is pointing a spear at him. He barely manages to dodge. Another knight tries to strike, which Patrick blocks. They were waiting for the right moment. The moment when the main knight would distract him so that they could sneak up on him from behind. Are these bastards not familiar with the concept of knightly honor? The Knight of Tesron laughed, not understanding what kind of knightly honor the crazy old man was talking about. Another knight tells him not to pay attention, because these are his last words before dying. The commander tells them not to think so lightly. They are after all dealing with a high-ranking knight. And if he were not with them, Patrick would have destroyed each of them without blinking an eye. Patrick takes advantage of the moment when the knight is distracted. He jumps from his horse and decides to unleash all his power on the knight. Full of determination and desire to win, Patrick, the leader of the army, does not intend to retreat under any circumstances. However, very quickly his menacing gaze disappears. The vile knight took advantage of the moment when Patrick attacked their commander and pierced him through with a spear. Red liquid slowly flows down the tip of the spear. He smiles, feeling superior, for he managed to wound Patrick McLean himself. To cause Patrick even more pain, he removes the spear from his body. The blood only increases, and pain permeates Patrick's entire body. His legs can barely support him anymore, but determination and desire for revenge forces his body to exceed its usual limits. While the high-ranking knight blocked his blows, the others attacked. It's clearly a trap, but he can't get past it. Tesron even brought people from the rear to finally drown Patrick's army. Having never met Logan on the battlefield, Patrick is not even upset. But on the contrary, he is glad that he did the right thing by running away and not ending up in the middle of hell. Patrick prepares to die, with the hope that his eldest son will continue the family legacy. Patrick has nothing more to lose. He is ready to die at any moment and embarks on an unequal battle against 5 knights, while Tesron watches from afar. He smiles evilly and thinks to himself that he did the right thing by not telling anyone about his high-ranking knight. Now all he needs to do is defeat Patrick and capture his castle. Suddenly, Tesron hears a strange sound. He turns around and realizes that this is the stomping of cavalry. A knight rides towards him on horseback to deliver a message. He says that they discovered a cavalry detachment numbering about 300 people. Tesron wonders if the McLeans have an elite cavalry unit. The knight also reveals that the cavalry's weapons are not spears. Their only weapons are small crossbows. Hearing this, Tesron calms down. He decides that a detachment of hunters armed with crossbows does not pose a threat, and orders soldiers from the rear and archers to be sent to quickly get rid of them. Tesron so proudly says that this is not an elite squad, but worthless warriors, that he does not even notice how in a second all the knights next to him instantly die. He looks in bewilderment at the knight whose head was pierced by the arrow. Then it finally dawns on him that something is wrong. He looks in horror in the direction where the arrows came from. Tesron sees a huge detachment of cavalry lined up. The main character is at the head of the cavalry. Logan surveys the battlefield. Unfortunately, they did not make it either to the beginning of the battle or to the middle. The green clearing is strewn with corpses and soaked in blood. Too many people have died. He sees a mortally wounded knight from his father's army, who with tears begs for help. Alas, this knight is unlikely to be saved. Logan will not leave it like this. He will take revenge for everyone whose life Tesron dared to take with the hands of his army. He orders to shoot. Tesron's face, counting on an easy victory, expresses animal horror. In the blink of an eye, the arrows seem to cover the sky and rush towards Tesron's army in a deadly flock.